Constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
So how you like me now? 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 How do you like the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts survey the world of toy comic books. That's all we talk about. Comic books based on toys by the Hasbro toy line. If you want to hear about any other type of comic book, get out, because we talk about toy comics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mobius Couch. Today's lyrical intro is, of course, the Heavies' How You Like Me Now, which played during the end credits of G.I. Joe Retaliation, starring Dwayne
I was going to say, how the fuck did you
Channing
pick that
Tatum.
song?
That's how I picked that song.
Oh, Channing Tatum. He played Duke. He was a kick-ass Duke.
He does play Duke. And that's topical because today we're going to talk about the Duke comic by Joshua Williamson and Tom Reilly. Before we get into that, introducing the members of the Mobius Couch, sitting on this couch, this interdimensional couch. Of course, I'm Alessandro, and joining me are Joe.
Hey, Alessandro.
What's up?
Hey, man.
And Patrick.
Hey, Joe. Hey,
Patty.
Hey, Alessandro. Backblast.
Hey. Backblast is the real G.I. Joe, by the way. That
Backblast is a G.I. Joe. That's correct.
Yep.
He shoots rockets off his backpack.
Off his back. And that's why he's called Backblast. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. As I mentioned, we talk about toy comics. Last episode was about Transformers. Transformers, more than meets the eyes. The robots in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about a related comic in the Energon universe that Image Comics is pumping out right now. And we're going to talk about Duke. I still need a heads up. It was I agree. That was the time to do it, but I need a heads up. You need
to take a beat. You need to naturally take a beat.
Okay.
It's not on me.
Okay. Fair enough. So we're talking about Duke.
That was the best y'all did it so far, though. That was like the best. That was the smoothest.
We're getting
there. I was trying.
We're getting there. All right. So Duke.
It's only taken 68 episodes.
Is that all? Yeah. All right, but so Duke is a 5-issue miniseries. It's the Energon universe includes Transformers, which you talked about last time. It's also got Cobra Commander, the mainline G.I. Joe comic, all sorts of stuff. So we're doing the 5-issue Duke run is what we're going to talk about. Tonight.
G.I. Joe. So the Transformers, they just launched with Transformers #1. For some reason, they decided to break G.I. Joe up into like different sub-series that led to G.I. Joe #1. So there's a couple of like short series. One's Scarlet, one's Cobra Commander, one's Destro, and one's Duke. And we're reading Duke today. But that led
the MCU. It's the MCU strategy. First you do Iron Man.
Well, it's also just a huge cast of characters, as opposed to like, I mean, Transformers is a pretty decent sized cast of characters.
But you can't.
They're
not
all
do
alive
a real
based on their story.
Yeah, you're not going to do
exactly.
Jack the comic.
Well, they could split Transformers. But there's another comic called Void Rivals that I have not read at all. I don't know what it's about, but I think it's taking place with some humans in space, and I have no idea who they are. Maybe they're G.I. Joes, maybe they're Cobra. I don't know. And then
nice.
And I think they're interacting with the Transformers in space. So there is a secondary Transformers comic. I just don't know anything about it. But
okay.
But it's a pretty big Energon universe they're building already.
It's pretty big. Yep. All right. So do we want to do a little background first to do overall takes before the background? How do we usually do
it? Background?
Okay.
Well, you can combine it, I guess. I don't know. Background probably first. Let's do background first. That makes
okay.
sense.
I think that's how we've done it in the past.
So let's go back to the beginning. All right, like Hillary Duff did in that "Rain Falling Down" song. She said, "Let's go back to the beginning." I think that's the first lyric.
Best songs of all time.
Incredible. Actually, what is this? It doesn't matter. I don't even remember the title, but it's something about rain falling down, and we're going to go back to the beginning. All right, G.I. Joe. So let's talk about the toys. This was devised in 1963 by Stanley Weston And then he sold that license to Hasbro for $100,000, and he should have charged more because it's made billions for Hasbro over the years. So the conceit of G.I. Joe was little girls love playing with Barbies.
Mm-hmm.
So doesn't that mean little boys would love playing with G.I. Joes? And
Yeah,
I'm not.
that's
literally that's why he invented
It's
it. He
12.
thought-
Yeah, the original toy line was
Yeah.
12 inches. They had cloth clothes, just like Barbies. They were Barbie sized.
Yeah, I mean that was literally the conceit was why don't we just do man Barbies for little boys, and they're based on the army because boys love the army.
We got to indoctrinate them young.
Yeah,
I like the idea of just
gotta get them in there young, you know?
I just like the idea of action figures just being referred to as man Barbies.
Yeah, that's
Never- I mean, that's
but they didn't. But you brought up
They were action
figure,
force. Yeah.
But action figure, like that term, was invented by Hasbro for this
G.I.
to
Joe.
market this
Yeah.
because they couldn't.
They
Because
didn't want to call them
obviously-
dolls.
Yeah, they couldn't be
So
dolls
they called
because
action figures.
Right, boys wouldn't play with dolls, so they invented action figures, and they
I call
debuted
all my toys because I don't have an insecurity problem with that.
well in the 1960s.
By the way, if you want to talk about G.I. Joe, you know how we adorably held up like a few Transformer toys that we own?
I don't have any G.I. Joe though.
If I was going to hold up every G.I. Joe I have, it would be here all fucking.
You don't have enough hands.
Yeah, I don't have enough.
You
We don't have enough
hands or
time.
arms.
It would take a month. The podcast would be a month long.
But so the actual toy line, debuted in '64, and that was G.I. Joe, and it came out with I think like 4 or 5 different, army men with different costumes. And then from there, it became, then they came out with the kind of the tinier figures and the machines and all the vehicles and all that. But this was the start of G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And G.I. Joe, the name became, because obviously GI is the term for like World War II on
General Infantry.
GI. And Joe is just G.I. Joe.
Joe, I think, came from just the generic term, like calling a grunt, or it's just like get all those Joes.
They just branded it
just
as
like
that.
John Doe kind of scenario.
And so that was the
and then they actually
of the
gave
toy.
him they actually made a Joe character eventually.
Yeah. And so that was the origin of the toy. And just like similar to Transformers, how the toy company thought, well, how do we more market these toys? Is cartoons and comics, etc.
In the 80s, there was very loose rules under Reagan with what was allowed to qualify itself as a cartoon. And because of that, all the cartoons were 30-minute commercials for the toys.
Basically. And G.I. Joe, just like Transformers, they made G.I. Joe cartoons, comics, all sorts of media tie-ins to just, A, to sell those, and B, to sell the toy. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and that's...
Wait,
that's what we have today.
Reagan made it so that
if I'm not mistaken, it was under Reagan's tenure that he pulled back all these regulations on what was allowed to be shown to children on television. Okay. And then basically that kind of loosened these boundaries around what could be classified as a commercial versus actual programming.
Interesting.
And so a commercial for a toy line.
And some of the shows are better about it, and there's actual storylines involved. And then some of them are just let's blatantly make an episode where they get in the new vehicle that we're about to put on toy shelves next week. And that mostly is what G.I. Joe is.
Yeah.
There's some short, cool 5-episode little mini movies that they would do, and everyone kind of remembers those the most because they probably played them over and over again on reruns. But if the normal television show was basically just let's have a couple of new toys that we just put out, run around and jump into new vehicles that we just put out.
Well, same. I mean, and it was honestly same with Transformers. Hey, here's these new dinosaur robots. Do you want to buy them?
And now it's dinosaur robots in this episode.
We sell them. Right.
Yeah. Which I mean, as a kid, I didn't care. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. But so that's the origin of G.I. Joe.
It worked. It worked.
The comic we're talking about, Duke, is of course part of this new Image comic Energon universe. Joshua Williamson, famous for he did a lot of Flash, a lot of DC Flash comics, which we haven't covered on this show, but maybe at some point we can do some. At some point,
he is
Flash.
one of my favorite characters of all time in space.
Yeah,
it's Rebirth.
So we did
Rebirth stuff.
Wally West. Wally West is not Barry Allen.
He also did Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. I didn't even know that existed, but that is
the fuck is that? That sounds like a parody.
It was the Dark Crisis. Oh no, it is Dark Crisis. It is Dark.
Yeah, it's Dark Crisis.
It has since been rebranded as Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Great.
But
But
I think
it
that
is
specifically is
22's
that
Dark
tie-in with the
Crisis.
Legion, isn't it? Isn't the Infinite Earths thing like the Legion tie-ins?
Is
to
that
the
an
Dark
old
Crisis?
thing?
Yeah, when
That-
Dark Crisis. No. Like when Dark Crisis was
No,
happening.
not according to Wikipedia. Dark Crisis on
Oh, maybe
on
I'm thinking of
Infinite
Final
Earths.
Crisis tie-in with the Legion. That's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking of.
Dark
The Dark
Crisis on
Crisis on
Infinite
Infinite Earths
Earths
is just Dark Crisis.
Is all of Dark Crisis, but it's been
Yeah.
rebranded as the
I'm thinking of Final Crisis.
the DC on IE.
You
is
know
what it's
all
been.
the crises
I'm
that
so
they
stupid.
have.
Crises.
It's hard to keep track.
Buddy,
So
it's
stupid.
Crises. Crises is the
No, it's
plural.
crises.
Nope.
Everyone knows that.
No, it's not. Patrick and I
Sure
took
it
Latin,
is.
okay? Patrick and I took Latin.
Oh,
We
is
know
it
Latin?
it's
Wait, both of you did?
crises.
I
Yeah,
remember
we
so
both did.
much.
Because Pat did soccer with Coach Folds, who taught Latin, and therefore I think was forced to take Latin.
Gonna beat that coach's name out.
Oh, I mean, we could beep it out. Yeah,
You
coach,
know.
the Roswell High School soccer coach from 2000 to 2004, and we can beep
That
out
was a
the name.
Latin. That was a Latin teacher that everyone.
That was a
in
Latin
Georgia
teacher. And we
knew.
can beep out the name to not reveal it. Okay, we don't have to talk about that. But so Joshua Williamson is the author. Tom Reilly does the art. The only thing I could find about Tom Reilly on his personal website is that he went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and does comic book art for Marvel, Dark Horse, and others. He's an Eagle Scout. He's also an Eagle Scout.
Oh, maybe that's where his love of G.I.Joe comes from.
Could be.
Being a
So
scout.
it's a creative team, and let's do overall takes to get into this. I'll go first. I weirdly had a lot of fun with this. I just had fun with it.
All right. Before you go
fun.
any further, I just have to say, like, my overall take is wildly biased. I grew up in the 80s. I love G.I. Joe. There's 1,000 G.I. Joes on the shelves behind me. There's 1,000 more in a closet that are the small ones from when I was a kid. I don't have an overall take because I'm biased, and I was genuinely curious what your reactions were going to be, and that kind of surprised me. I'll go on.
Well, the way I ingested this comic is pretty similar to how I watched the Reacher show. It's both ironically and genuinely offers something to you.
I
Like this comic
completely.
is it's fucking ridiculous. There's like Village People soldiers with names like Backblast and like Scrapyard or whatever, and like
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, and you know all that shit
Rock
is,
and
you know,
roll.
it's unreal, and like and just all the
Is that his voice in your head?
yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a Family Guy episode where Kiss is like a guest star, and they all make fun of the guy with the blue paint, and it'll be out of context, and he'll just go rock and roll.
Oh, all right.
Anyways,
I get it.
Alessandro, continue.
Yeah, but I just mean it's filled with this insane cast of characters, and the plot conceit of this dude has to be on the run for no reason, and so he's on the run, and you know all of it's just ridiculous, and ironically, you appreciate that. At the same time, genuinely, it's just kind of like fun action and intrigue, and stuff blows up, and I can't explain it. It's like a 90s macho, like hyper masculine sort of experience that, like Reacher, I just kind of I sort of enjoyed it. I had a good time with it, and that's my overall take of the comic.
Well, we all know what I'm going to say. Patty, why don't you go?
Oh God. Okay, so I guess I should start off first of all, like just in general, since I was a kid, I've never been a fan of like the Western genres or military genres. I just don't.
Okay.
The way my brain works, like if there's not magic or science fiction, something happening, I just kind of tune out a little bit. So I'm a little bit biased the other way. And I think that's why growing up, I never watched G.I. Joes. The only G.I. Joe action figures I had were Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Like there has to be some sort of like mystical element to
Nixon, yeah.
So just like from the get-go, I think just like fighting with guns, like rock and roll is just the most ridiculous character ever. Like it's just like, I think Al approached it better, saying he approaches it like Reacher, like trying to, because there are good bits of it with Duke. Duke as a character, I really liked. The overall conceit of what is happening is just bananas, and it was enjoyable enough that it was a quick read for me, and I did enjoy it better than Transformers because there's actual like character development and a plot and story happening. But overall, I was kind of I think just because the military setting and conflicts just don't interest me that much, I just kind of thought it was okay. It was weird because I enjoyed the plot more than Transformers, but I enjoy watching big robots fight each other more so than just active military men. I don't know how to explain it. Really.
No, I get that. Yeah, I get that.
But
makes
it
sense.
was
Let's go.
character-wise, Duke. The way I almost wish I read this before Transformers, because the way Duke views getting Duke's POV of Starscream splatting his friend is way more powerful in this than it was. Like Transformers, it's almost comical because it's just like
because it is.
But
It's
that's what I
comical.
liked about it, because something that's so comical and that Starscream wouldn't even be aware that he
Blink.
did.
And it was like
just defines
one
Duke's
of
life moving forward.
The first
It's like
people he
trauma.
squished.
Yeah. So I think there were, again, like the character of Duke I really liked, and I think I should have been more optimistic and approached it like Al did. But overall, the story, I was like, what the fuck is, like, they just let him go, like now he's on the run again. Like I don't understand how we got here.
Well, it was all Colonel Hawk's plan to then have him come, and what we can get into that. But again, you have to approach it with enough of a degree of like irony and just sort of whatever.
Yeah, the Reacher
to get the good.
The Reacher
parts,
mentality
you know?
is perfect.
Yeah.
I like kind of Die Hardish too. Like the amount of punishment physically that they go through and keep going is like insane. Like he gets shot in the leg at one point, and then he just goes, and the next issue is like, oh, the bleeding stopped. He keeps fighting, like it's not like, man.
It's very much like an 80s Schwarzenegger Stallone movie. It's the same thing where like they'll get shot in an arm, wrap a belt around it and they're fine. It's that kind of logic that
it's also
all over this comic.
It's like domino luck powers, because the amount of times he dodges like 1,000 bullets at the same time is just unreal. It happens like 4 different times.
Well, he's a well-trained.
He's a man of action.
He's a highly trained, skilled soldier. That's why. Yeah.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained special missions force. Everyone knows that.
All right, Joe. Do you want to do more with your overall take?
My overall take is, I loved it, but mostly, but in all seriousness, though, I like it was it spoke to like the way I liked it when I was a kid, but also being adult at the same time, which I kind of loved. It was a good mix of like the silliness, like we were kind of saying, but also kind of bringing in like an older reader like me, which is who it's for. Let's be honest. Like the kids that like me that watched G.I. Joe and had G.I. Joe when they were kids, this is who it's written for. So like this is a very refreshing and interesting take on like the beginning of the team, which I really enjoyed. And then because they've done this a couple times recently in the past, like, and I know, and I haven't read some of that, like, I don't know, some of the more recent stuff, like I think IDW had it for a little while with Transformers, and they've made like a couple of different runs on it, trying to make like a new, hey, it's G.I. Joe, we're bringing it back, and I kind of never got into any of those, so like so that says something, like that this one is refreshing and new and different than all those ones that have come before, that where they've tried this before. You know what I mean?
Well, I think so. We'll get into it more when we talk about the specific issues, but I think they go with classic storylines that resonate. The loyal soldier betrayed by his country out to prove a point is like, that is a conceit that's worked in film, books, whatever. So basically every single Mission Impossible movie is this plot, which is
yes, exactly.
by
and
number
I love
9,
those too.
Well,
that's what I just, not to interrupt you, but when I was thinking about my overall take, I was like, I hate Mission Impossible movies. I've watched like 3 of them, and I'm like, this is the most boring shit to me. If I have
I also, at what point does the government just like, if somebody frames Ethan Hunt, at what point does the government just say, no, never mind? Like, we've done this before.
We know it's not him.
Yeah,
he's gonna save the world in the next 24 hours.
It's like, this is the 9th time a Russian oligarch has framed him. Like, we know it's not him. It's gonna be.
At any rate, given all of that, there's things that I liked about it outside of the normal G.I. Joe.
I liked
the art was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
I love the art. I want to talk about the art. It's
really good art in terms of like just background shit. Like there's a shot of Clutch's like, junkyard, and it's just filled with cars, and they look great. And it's just them walking through the cars like that. And I'm just like, wow, that really looks like a yard filled with fucking like he spent time drawing all those goddamn cars. It's
But
just
it's also
it's little shit like that, but the action's fantastic, and like the motion blur, and like there's little things that he does, and I guess I'll point them out as we go, but like just little things like he punches something hard and the strap of his glove is like popping up in such a way that it just looks like it just happened, and it's really fluid the way it looks. I don't know, just can't say enough about how much the art pulled me into the story as much as the story did.
No, I love the art because it's aesthetically, to me, it seemed like kind of a mix of sort of 70s European art, like Corto Maltese, and like French art from the 70s, times David Aha, kind of a more modern.
Yeah.
I mean, not that
it's
Aha's
got like
also
that
a European
Aha
artist, but
mix in it, and then there's like a little bit of Tintin in the detail
I
in the
was
background, like I was
too.
saying.
It's
Yeah,
very,
like there's a little bit of like
Tintin
yeah
to it.
Hair
But
Day.
so I liked that kind of old-timey European comic aesthetic it brought in. I think it works great for the genre too, like this genre of like military action and stuff like that. It was great. Tom Reilly did really an amazing work.
And on the one last thing I'd want to say is like Patrick kind of talked about like Duke's perspective in the Starscream event, and like I read this first, so I read this book way before we read Transformers for the show. So like I was reading these books, like I was in the middle of G.I. Joe. Like I read Cobra Commander and Scarlet. I actually haven't read the Destro one, but it's really because the art looks like and I'm like, I'll get to it. But like the G.I. Joe books started, G.I. Joe's only on issue 4 or so right now. So Transformers is on like 17 or something like that. So this has been going for like a year and a half now, I think, or so. But like so I had seen this event from Duke's perspective. So when I saw it in Transformers, I was like, oh, there's a lot more going on there than like we get to see. And that's fun. And that's why I was like, we need to read this as a tie into that. But like, and I was, well, not weirdly insistent, but I wanted to see if you guys liked Transformers at all. I mean, G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. Anyway, but like, that for me, it was a little different reading the Transformers scene because I had already read the Duke one, and I was like, oh, interesting. I know what goes on there.
All right, let's get into it. So by the
Duke, the number 1.
I got mine digitally from my local library. It does not have issues, so I'm not going to be able to go like issue 2, 3, and 4. But let's just kind of try to go sequentially and the stuff that happens, because mine is just not split up into different chapters, really.
Right.
But so we've already talked about this, but kind of what sets all this off is Duke's experience in the Transformers comic, which we talked about last time. Which was Starscream. So Duke is a jet pilot along with his version of Goose or whatever, the other jet pilot that died.
So the weird thing in G.I. Joe is that they can all fly the jets.
They all fly jets. Okay.
So I don't think he's technically a pilot. I just think he knows how to fly it, which is stupid. Doesn't make any sense.
That's how the real world works.
But in the book, he's just riding with the pilot of the jet, like he's just the passenger.
And this was that scene we talked about last time where Starscream attacked these jets and just kind of like hand squashed them and killed.
So after that happened, Duke has been like falling apart at the seams, and basically
he's lost.
Colonel Hawk is like, there's a little bit of backstory of like, this is who Duke is. You're awesome, and this is all the things you've accomplished. Now, what the fuck happened to you? Because now you're not.
They do multiple people at different times really stress how amazing Duke is.
Well, I mean, he is amazing.
Well, that's what kind of one of my. It's the way they do it though, where it's just kind of like they'll be watching him fight, and it's just like the villain in the background be like, I gotta say, he's really impressive. It's
he's
like
amazing.
It would be. Just like they just spoon feed in Clutch, man. He is just the fan.
He loves Duke.
Clutch and Duke are best buds.
I think Clutch it's kind of a one-sided friendship.
But it reminds me of, remember when we did the new Ultimate Spider-Man, and MJ and Peter had that conversation where MJ's like, "Look, Peter, not only are you a great father, but you're the best husband around."
Yes,
whatever you
it did feel
and it's
like
that. It's that kind of like anyone who addresses Duke is just like, "Look, Duke, not only are you an amazing human being, but you're also the best human being I know." And it's everyone's very complimentary of Duke, is what we're saying.
The conceit of the story is that Colonel Hawk basically wants to investigate and set Duke on an investigation, but can't do it legally. So he's going like, fuck you, you're washed up and get out of here. And it kind of riles him up. And then Duke's like, fuck you, I'm leaving. I'm doing it all on my own. He's like, that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
So he's secretly keeping tabs. That's basically what he's doing. Yeah. So
He was keeping tabs.
No, but we don't
What?
we don't find out until the end that that's what Hawk was doing.
Right. But this is the scene where he's doing that, essentially.
Yes, right.
Like,
but
he's
to Patrick's
riling
point,
Duke
I mean,
up
we
and,
don't
like, going,
we
like,
don't
what's-
know it until
yeah.
just the very end. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely overlooked all that. I
Oh,
must have
well, did
not.
you? Yeah. Well, at the end, you find he kind of mentions that, like, all right, this was all just kind of because my hands were tied, so I used you to.
Yeah, I
settle this
used you
emotion.
to, like, because I knew you wouldn't, like, let it go, kind of thing. I knew you'd
So
go
he
under it.
tracks down this old woman who's a UFO nut in DC. She's just like a conspiracy alienologist, crazy, and he tracks her down. She's got the Charlie from It's Always Sunny conspiracy wall in her basement all set up.
So apparently she was like so again, like, mixing in the Transformers. That's another thing I was kind of interested to see where these books were going, because, like, Transformers and G.I. Joes, and we talked about this on the Transformers episode, they've mixed before, but it's never been like super interconnected like this. Like, they've had this is an interesting way of doing it. So, like, the conceit of this is, like, the Transformers are on Earth and it's causing all these things, which is starting G.I. Joe, but at the same time there's like a kind of an energy arms race with Destro and, like, what's going on and Cobra, which we don't really see a whole lot of in this.
I have a lot of questions about Destro, though.
Okay. Well, we can answer.
Well, when we
but
get
this
to there,
woman apparently was, like, working on a super secret project, and once she started asking a bunch of questions, they were like, get the fuck out of here. So she, like, saved some of her research, and she's hiding under the guise of, like, I'm going to keep doing my research, but I'll make these UFO nuts be part of the cover of me continuing to figure out, or, like, gather information and figure shit
right.
out.
But so this old crazy lady's research leads Duke to Mars Industries, which is Destro's company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although he mentions the Destro company has been making weapons for millennia, but it's Mars. Where does
Destro's
Mars
like,
mean?
I forget what the breakdown is.
Why isn't it just
military
Destro
arms
LLC?
Something.
Why isn't it Destro LLC?
That's the master company. That's the umbrella company that Mars.
I got it. Like Alphabet.
Yeah.
Okay, like Alphabet
Yeah.
to Google. So Destro to
Yeah.
Mars. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's Military Armament Research Syndicate.
That makes sense.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Syndicate.
Well,
Wow, they put syndicate in their legal
name.
entity's name.
In their legal entity's
okay.
name.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
Mhm.
Their headquarters featured really ripped statues.
Erotic,
really
yeah.
erotic statues.
So that's
of,
literally, like, I mean, I think it's a statue of Destro. He probably
Yeah, but
posed
it's-
nude for that with a big
it's
shield.
a nude. It's a nude ripped man with a shield. Like it's like if the Oscar statue was holding a sword and shield and in the lobby of a company. It's
There's
kind of
again, I'm not gonna, like, bog us down with cool little Easter eggs and stuff, but there's a lot of fun G.I. Joe Easter eggs in this. Like, one of the blueprints they look at together is, like, it's called the Mass Device, and there's, like, a 5-part miniseries in G.I. Joe called the Mass Device or whatever, and, like, they all like it's like energy based free energy system, and that's kind of what she's working on, and I thought that was kind of funny.
What
I mean, like,
page
it's just
is
like
that
a
on?
throwaway.
Where's the master? What page is that on?
It's on one of the blue. They're, like, looking up her crazy wall of Charlie drawings, and one of them, and then the next page is, like, a very distinct.
Is it the treads and the rocket?
It's the treads, and it's
okay,
not like
okay.
it's like a weird crystal on the end of an energy. It looks like a dildo.
I see. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the vibrator. More of a vibrator, I guess, or
Yeah,
a Theragun. More of like a Theragun.
Sure, yeah.
Theragun,
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah.
Which is not a vibrator.
Before we get to just kind of piggybacking off of Joe's Easter egg. Well, I was actually going to say the art, it vibrates in this as well to show movement, more like a rippling effect, if you will, but it kind of vibrates. But the Easter one to the art notes, we talked about how the artist in Transformers did a lot of work with the onomatopoeia sounds.
Yes.
And when Duke's friend is killed by Starscream, it's a splat and it's written
It
in
is
blood.
a splat. Yeah.
And when
that is
Duke
great.
when Duke has the flashback, the splat in his reflection is kind of done in the same style as it was in Transformers. So I just kind of like
shunk. Yeah,
that
shunk
cohesion.
and palm. There's a shunk
Yeah.
and palm in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. And also the image that's on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, he's kind of belaying down a rope down an elevator shaft, and it's going zzz, and it's like traveling down the elevator shaft with him as he's going down.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, but
There's some
the
cool little
action
stuff.
too. It's very. I think I know how we talked about DWJ with Transformers, but I think Reilly and DWJ both, they show movement great. They pick kind of a an mid-movement freeze frame that really displays the motion.
So
And I
even
think
when
they
it's not
both
like
do that
blurred,
well, yeah.
which he does do, like the blurry limbs and arms when they're punching in speed lines and stuff when the vehicles are driving fast and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes he doesn't. It's just like a still frame, and like, but there's always kind of like, he does a really good job of showing like a standing still walking, or like, you know, just kind of standing there, human being, versus like somebody sliding down a rope, and I buy it every time. Like, it looks great.
All right, so back to the story. So Duke uncovers kind of their sort of not a factory floor, but kind of like a warehouse of finished product.
Yeah.
Of
And
all
again,
sorts
like
of
heavy Easter eggs for every G.I. Joe toy that ever made.
yeah, and it's all sorts of like machinery and helicopters and boats and all that. And then he's accosted by a man who's
Zangief.
wearing a vest but without a shirt.
His name is Mercer.
Mercer. And
And
he's wearing,
in this,
it looks like
in
a
this
bulletproof
version of the
sort
story,
vest.
he's on Destro's team, which is another interesting little thing that they're doing with some of the characters, and we'll tell more about that as
Is
we
he
go on. But
normally a
like,
G.I. Joe in
so he's a
historically?
Viper, which is like one of the soldiers of Cobra. But he's in the movie, when he's a character as Mercer, he's an ex-Viper. So like the reason he has a name and a face is because he's an ex-Viper. So it's interesting that he's like a character, but also still a bad guy. So because like classically in G.I. Joe, he was just like a faceless troop, and then he was like, I don't want to be a terrorist anymore. I'm going to go join these guys. And that's when he's like, I have a face now and a name, codename
But
like G.I. Joe.
they have again, this is I don't know how to describe it, but it's a super stock 80s kind of exchange where they fight and one of them lands a blow and like Mercer goes, huh, you know, like he's getting pumped by the fact that he's been hurt. It's the very kind of macho thing of like, okay, I can finally test my real strength.
I actually really enjoy the fight
kind of
choreography. It comes across pretty realistic. Like Duke doesn't, after he lands an initial blow and Mercer's like, fuck you, I'm huge and strong. He really just kind of blocks everything and then throws it. You know, like he doesn't, he's like, I'm not going to be able to take this guy out with my fists. So like he just waits for, you know, there's several punches thrown and Duke dodges a lot of them. Tries to get one and doesn't really do anything. But then he's like, I'm just going to chuck him across the room, which is pretty insane because the guy's huge. But
he just sort of like Asian martial art inspired CQC of like joint manipulation and
pretty
blocks
fun
and
fight
choreography.
It's a really fun fight because two things with the fight. I liked when he headbutts. Whatever the bad guy's name is, like Mercer, how the Mercer's body is just white, like bone white. It just kind of made me think of how hard, like that guy just felt it in his entire skeleton, that like headbutt to the jaw. And then
coloring note. I love that.
The way he kind of judo throws Mercer.
Mm-hmm.
Mercer over. I like how it's just a close up of the feet, showing that Duke is
lifting off the ground, and then the next panel is just him hitting. I love it because it's from the factory floor, so it's kind of far away, and you just see against the glass. Like even the little tink sound is like written kind of small, like they barely see outside room.
I also
I love that.
Another thing I want to call out, because this fight brings it out, but another just visual reference this comic makes a ton, apart from 70s European comics, is 60s and 70s Hong Kong movies, like Shaw Brothers, sort of crime martial arts movies. Because those featured a lot of like people ganging up on the hero and the hero just being physically pushed to the limit, which is displayed by injuries that the hero undertakes, like scars, blood, shirts ripped off, like really showing the physical stress that the hero is undergoing to overcome and you know and be heroic or whatever, which was a big, like that was a really big motif in 60s and 70s.
Like the amount of
Hong Kong
soldiers
film.
it takes to mob him over him is like absurd, but it's also kind of amazing too. You know,
but that goes back to like there's Vengeance with an exclamation point is like a classic Shaw Brothers film, which kind of set the standard and tone for a lot of these martial arts movies, and that features a lot of like one-on-many fights, and the guy just like, and the main hero just getting punched and beaten and working through it and overcoming just the distress that his physical body is being put through. A lot of Bruce Lee, like if you've seen Bruce Lee movies, Similarly, Bruce Lee in a lot of fights takes his shirt off, shows his body, his physicality, the injuries he features, because it's all about showing like what the human body can overcome, like the stress and duress that
That's
your
kind of why I
body
mentioned
can
the Die
overcome.
Hard kind of
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, it's like
Right.
like it's
And that
slowly whittling him
informed a
away,
lot
and
of
he's still going. Yeah, by the end.
exactly. And that informed a lot of like 80s and 90s American action movies, where
Mhm.
similarly Schwarzenegger, shirt off, you see his physical body overcoming all these hurdles, right?
Yeah.
And I want to highlight that point. I want to highlight this page, which is incredible. When
Yeah, it is really
the
cool.
Mars security forces, I mean, if you're on the podcast, you can't see this, but on YouTube, when the Mars security forces get into the fight between Mercer and Duke, they just overwhelm Duke. And this panel here is, I can't describe it. It is such an amazing panel.
It's
But it is
fantastic.
Duke.
Every single one of those dudes has movement, and like they're not just
Yeah.
like a crowd of guys. Like he took the time to be like, where's the next guy standing? How is he moving? How is he being shoved forward by the guys behind him? You know, like some of them in the background or on the edges rather are just like have their hands up waiting for their turn to get in there and beat the fuck
Yeah,
out of him.
and they're
pretty awesome.
overwhelming him like ants on food. They are just
Yeah.
smothering and overwhelming him. Kind of like they also did the same thing in the in Matrix Reloaded when Neo fights all the Agent Smith
Right,
clones.
yeah,
They pile onto him. It's been done before, but I love the
your point,
visuals of this.
like the cut scene, it basically cuts with them throwing him out of the building after that because they're being told not to kill him because it'll bring too much heat down on Mars Industries or whatever. And like, so he's just drug out front and he's bleeding and black-eyed and like little holes in his shirt everywhere. And it just shows that they beat on him for quite some time before they're like, all right, let's throw him out the front door.
And then I laughed because this whole time Duke just looks insane and is screaming, "I knew it! You built it! I knew it!"
Yeah.
He just looks like an insane man. I just laughed.
Yeah.
Again.
Well,
Like
so he
Charlton
saw like
Heston
one like robotic suit in their armory downstairs. It was like they made the robot. Like he was immediately like,
I knew it. But he's like Charlton Heston at the end of Planet of the Apes. Like, you did it. I knew. It's just crazy, screaming. He's crazy.
Yeah,
it's been like 6 months of him looking for, right? How long has it been?
Like a lead.
It's been 6 months because from the Colonel Hawk interview to now, it's been 6 months.
Yeah.
Like he's been unraveling quite a bit.
Right.
No, Patrick,
so this lead, the first genuine lead he's had is from this old woman. He's thriving.
He's thriving. All right, he's doing fine.
Like, so Dr. Burkhart's like his first real like lead on the situation kind of thing. But
and we get
introduced
to,
like,
I guess,
if he were to disappear or die, it would draw too much attention to our operation, like chuck him out the door kind of thing.
And Destro's also a very kind of 60s, 70s James Bond setup where, so, I mean, he's the CEO of a publicly traded company, I guess, but his office is flames around a throne.
He's a James Bond villain, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the CEO founder of a company nowadays. And
he's not the founder. They've been selling weapons for millennia.
That's true. The Destro, but Mars he may have founded.
Oh, Mars.
The Destro family
he probably founded Mars Industries.
But anyway, I just mean it's like if Jeff Bezos' office was a fire ring around a throne.
Cool little nod.
It might be though.
It could be, maybe.
We're in such a dumb timeline that this definitely could be Elon Musk's office.
We don't know.
We don't know. Leopard on the wall.
It might be Zuckerberg. This might be based on Mark Zuckerberg's office.
So the one cool thing in his office I thought was neat was the Iron Maiden is in there, and it's kind of like like Destro classically wears the metal mask, and it's kind of like a reference to the Man in the Iron Mask kind of thing. And I
want
like
to talk about that
ancient shit like in the background.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
so let's talk about it now because later they reveal Destro, but let's just talk about it now. He's dressed like he's got like a Gimp from Pulp Fiction mask with like a collar, and a mask.
A metal mask.
Why? What are we doing?
Why
a Doctor Doom looking Gimp thing? Why? What's going on?
Are you asking if he's disfigured under there?
Well, why does he have a BDSM mask with a collar?
I think it's out of like honor or something. Like his ancestors who started selling weaponry or whatever, or were betrayed back in the day, like had the Man in the Iron Mask kind of like thing happen to them, and like then like all the descendants after that like wear it as like a sense of like as a more like flipping it on its head, and it's like a point of pride to be like I'll wear this Iron Mask because like that's what happened to my great grandfather or whatever, and then
Got it.
you know,
Okay, so Destro the First was Man of the Iron Mask, and then
basically,
his
yeah.
descendants said we are now going to own it, like kind of like
Yeah, we're now owning that.
Never mind. I'm not going to say what it's like because it would be. I'm not going to do that. But I get what you mean. They're taking the power back.
Yeah, they're
of
taking
the
the power
mask.
back. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm not going to go into more detail about that.
No.
So Duke getting
Yeah,
kicked
that's
out
my
and not being
podcast.
murdered is just this is just information that he needed to know he's on the right path, because he knew if they had killed him, then basically he understands why he was left alive as well. It's very suspicious, and he's like, I think I'm on the right track. But when he gets back to the house,
left alive?
they're all dead.
Batshit insane old lady. Yeah, the lady UFO. And look at the piles.
Oh man,
these were all
those
crazy
poor suckers. Those poor suckers just murdered.
Alienologists. Luckily, the lady was left alive long enough to then give him a hint of what he needed to do next before done.
That was so random. I guess I don't know.
I mean, she's full of holes and
It makes
dragging
sense, Patrick.
a
It
bloody
makes
trail
sense.
across the ground before.
Sometimes someone lives long enough to tell the hero, "Here's what you need to do next."
I like how she's like, they
Sometimes
stole
it
all my
happens.
research, but they missed this. It's my cell phone in my pocket. Here you go.
It's also.
Or, I mean, it might not. She might have been hidden somewhere. I'm just saying it's funny because it's the only thing she's holding. And they're like, they got all my research, but not this. This one cell phone that has trackers on it.
Can you imagine in 2025 murdering somebody and like wiping their PC, getting rid of all their stuff in their home, but leaving their cell phone in their pocket?
Cell phone.
That's on recording. That's on record. Just like
it's just insane to not go there, but okay. But they did that.
And you're like an elite like Black Ops assassin group. That's
side note.
Well, we don't know. We don't know they're elite. We know that Mars hired them. We don't know that they're elite.
Yeah,
Mars might be cutting costs. A lot of companies are cutting costs, Patrick. A lot of companies are cutting back.
The cops run in the room and say freeze. And first of all, there's like 15 of them. And second of all, Duke's like, whoa, boys, I'm unarmed. We're on the same side. Just let me get my ID. And then one of them goes, he's got a gun! And he goes, oh, fire. And I was like, I don't know if that's specifically commentary on police.
Oh, man.
It has to be.
Holy shit.
I mean, he has both hands
like
up
it was
a gun, so it has
well,
to
I mean, theoretically they're corrupt cops and they were paid to do what they're doing, so they could blame him.
Okay, but still, it's still very much a callback to like, I'm unarmed. He's got a gun, just kill him. Yeah.
And
the amount of times the bang, 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 like bang is written like 80 million times in that image.
Yeah.
It's also scary.
1,000 bullets.
But it's a
terrifying. 2 of them do
hit
him, which we'll see in the later scene.
But I do.
He gets hit by 2 out of 40,000 bullets.
But an art note. I mean, it is a terrifying. Did you ever see?
They're really.
It was a.
Yeah. Jinro was great. They are Jinro looking.
It's very Jinro looking with the full mask, just the anonymous full mask, and they're just.
It's also very similar to like
almost
the Bloodhound helmets that the guys are wearing later. So like maybe they're not real cops. I don't know. But
similar to the
it's also very similar to like a Viper or like a Cobra Trooper's helmet would have later on. So it's also not like these might not be real cops. They're probably just working for industrial.
And the next page also art-wise, again, if you're on the podcast, you can't really see, but this page of Duke running away and jumping through the window is again just bang, 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 bullets everywhere. And
again, the artist's ability to kind of like draw a still human being in the right proportions and make it make sense, but then also just elongate and just stretch their body out when they're running is like really awesome. And I just like the one where he's just about to break through the window and he's like reaching for like it's almost like his body's stretching towards the window to smash through it. And the second he does, to your guys' point, one of the cops is like, "What the hell?" And the other cop's like, "No way, he survived that."
And because it's insane.
It just keeps happening. The whole series is just like, "Do you see how cool he is? He's pretty cool." You see that?
And then we see in the next page too. I mean, aside from jumping through the window and the gunshots, he's bleeding everywhere. And again, it goes back to that motif of we are going to distress the physical body of our hero to show how much he can overcome and how powerful the human body is under duress. And we're definitely doing that because this dude is messed up. He is shot and cut up all over. And then we get introduced to Rock and Roll and Stalker.
Yeah, so Colonel
Rock-
Hahn was
Other
like,
American
"Fuck,
heroes.
a bunch of civilians died. This isn't working. I know, like, now I actually have to go after him and catch him."
We need American heroes. We need G.I. Joes. Stalker and
Yeah,
rock and roll.
Stalker
In
and
the
rock
few
and roll.
notes I took, I said, and then we meet Stalker and rock and roll. ... Ridiculous. Rock and roll is like pure 80s Predator. He's got the fucking bullets in a X formation across his chest.
That's
They're
classic.
both
action
Predator.
figure.
Blasting.
It's classic action figure.
But they're both Predator. Stalker is in the jungle. I mean, they're both Predator. Like both of
Yeah,
them are
it is
very
very
much
Predator.
from
Yeah,
that.
Stalker's kind of a badass.
I did want to
I was
say-
hyped when I saw those two characters.
Well, I want to say it's funny because they get called in and they're just shown in action. But I was thinking it'd be funny if it showed them like more realistically in action of like deporting immigrants to Guantanamo or doing just something dumb like that. Or, like that's what they get called in to do. You know, is like stop. You know, put down those
Stop what you're doing.
El Salvadorian immigrants and come help me fight Duke. You know, it's just anyway. Everything's
God.
fine. We're doing great. Our army is
Guys,
doing great work.
G.I. Joe is the
Doing
codename
great.
for America's daring, highly trained special message force.
It is that.
What?
Their
It was
purpose is to
hard. I didn't
defend
put it in my
human
overall
freedom
take, but it was.
against Cobra. Huh?
It's very much on Duke's side these days, especially like rebelling against the government. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, yes. the guys that were following orders, I was like, you guys need to wisen up.
I do
Chill.
want to. I also one thing I want to call
I actually,
out.
on that note, in the next issue, they already question like what they're doing. They're like, why is Duke in jail? Like, why are we capturing
Also,
Duke
rock
and putting him in jail?
and roll is like, I don't think we could have taken him if he wasn't
Rock and roll
dead.
is
If he
in
wasn't
love
so
with
banged
Duke.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock and roll is in love with Duke. But I want to
Duke's
talk
a
about,
natural born man of action. He's
They're all in love with him.
born a leader. Everyone respects him, even rock and roll and Stalker. That's what
So-
you guys will just have to come to learn.
We got to talk about his friend. What's his friend's name? Clutch.
Clutch, yeah.
Yeah.
Clutch
I wanna-
is
so,
Clutch is
Time out.
yeah. Let's talk
Time
about Clutch. Let's talk.
There's
about
a lot.
Clutch.
All right,
We need to
There's
let's
a
talk
talk
lot.
about
about
Clutch.
Clutch.
So
We
first
need to
off,
talk about Clutch.
Clutch is looking at a phone newsreel about an American hero wanted for murder on the run. American hero wanted and murder are in different color font than their. And what news source operates this way?
It's
Where-
just cool. It's just cool
What
art.
news source operates that with like
You know?
different color fonts?
This is
for
issue number 2,
words?
by the way.
Okay, this is issue 2.
Introducing Clutch.
The other thing I want to do is I want to begin by asking both of you a question. Have you ever seen the film Swordfish?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is exactly what Hugh Jackman is doing in Swordfish. He's standing on top of a trailer, like in a wife beater playing golf when John Travolta rolls up to him.
I have almost no recollection of that movie.
I was
other
gonna
than
say that
the
movie
bomb
is
going off with all
25.
Right.
the ball bearings, and I remember all the ball bearings going. Zoop, zoop, zoop,
I
and,
just
like,
wanna
ripping through
say-
a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
This is the
Oh yeah.
exact
Oh, and yeah, and Halle Berry.
This is the exact
Berry,
setup
yes.
that Hugh Jackman is in Swordfish that Clutch is in. So I just want to make that
Okay.
comment.
Well,
Also,
they're
he went
both
to
gay,
MIT.
so that makes sense.
Wait, who's gay? Sorry.
Well, I don't know. Hugh Jackman's
Hugh
not dating
Jackman
this
isn't,
woman.
buddy.
I
You've
don't
got
know
to
what's
admit,
going
maybe
on.
he's not gay. Maybe he's not gay.
He's got to be on the scale. Clutch
Well,
might.
we're all
They're
on the
as gay
scale.
as each other. Well,
Aren't
yeah,
we all
we're on the
You
scale.
can't say he's
Like
on
we're on the
scale.
Snyder Zoo scale.
Yeah,
He's
we're
on
all
like
on the
the
Snyder
scale.
scale.
I don't think I'm on the Snyder
He's on like the
scale.
scale.
Every human being alive is on the Snyder scale. Are you a
Okay, well,
full-grown
whatever.
human?
I'm a negative. I think I'm a negative on the Snyder
You have.
scale.
You can't be negative. That would mean you're not even born. What
Wait,
are you
we're-
arguing about the
okay.
Snyder scale?
Anyway, I just wanted to make the point that this Clutch introduction is Hugh Jackman from Swordfish. That's all I wanted
Okay.
to say. That's
Does
all.
he have a
Why doesn't his
good-looking woman in
MIT
his trailer that he doesn't remember their name? I think that's just a. By the way, he's really fucking smart. You know, it's not just like.
Well,
you
he
know,
went to
I think that's all it
MIT.
is.
He went to MIT.
But his
so-
MIT, it's a Bachelor of Science.
He has a
in
bachelor's.
blank.
It's not even an advanced degree. It's a bachelor's from MIT.
Yeah, man, you know,
But it's
he's a
blank.
smart
What
guy.
did he major in?
Why not give
Did he
him a
major in
PhD?
everything?
It's
Why not
censored
give
by
him
the U.S. government because he's so highly trained.
Oh, interesting.
If your point is to showcase how
Interesting.
smart this dude is, don't give him a bachelor's diploma.
I don't think the average reader is really looking into that. I think they just see MIT and go, "Oh, got it, smart guy." Moving on.
He got
Like, I don't
but
think they're all like
anybody.
reading the minute details of his fucking
Why is it
degree.
A bachelor's degree is nothing. Like that's not really that difficult. Like anybody,
I mean,
he could be a
sure, I'm not
legacy.
I'm
He could be a
I'm not saying he
legacy
isn't.
admission into MIT and then get a bachelor's degree.
I mean, clearly he loves to drink and build cars, and he doesn't give a fuck. So, like, you know,
I bet he was on the air quotes rowing team, and that's how he got into MIT.
Probably.
maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I'm a lot less impressed with this guy's academic achievements.
They
now that he
do,
has
they
a
do,
bachelor's
they
degree
do
at
the
MIT.
classic predator
80s. Yeah.
handshake though, which I thought was hilarious.
They do. They also have like a Jesus halo around there. It's a Jesus
They're like-
halo and solar eclipse in one behind
Yeah.
their handshake.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, art nose wise, I don't care. I think that looks cool.
No,
Like,
I'm
that's
not. I think it's great. I think I love the art in all of these issues. I think it's really great.
Yeah, and then he does the classic male chauvinist thing where he doesn't remember the woman's name, and then she slaps him and leaves, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Haha,
But
same
thi-
old
this-
clutch."
But this
Classic,
is what I meant.
classic.
But this is what I meant by this feels like something out of time. This is an 80s, 90s action
Yeah.
thing
Yeah,
ported forward. Yeah.
I mean, it's done in a better way, I think, and almost poking fun at itself in ways. Like it's a little bit of meta commentary, but like you're right, it's there. Like it's definitely.
I think it's more
There.
enjoyable if you're aware of that as you're reading it. Otherwise,
Yes.
it
maybe,
comes off
yeah,
as
and then
really
again, like
insane.
Let me
I- we
rephrase
joked,
this.
we joked
If
about
none of
talking
this-
about history, and I was like, "Well, what do you need?" like a vast warehouse.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to say, if none of this was written ironically, we have a problem.
Oh yeah,
That's all I would say. Like, if this was meant to be 100% genuine, this is good storytelling. J-Dub's got a problem.
so Duke
But I think
collapses, and it's a little, and Clutch realizes he's hurt, so they take time to patch him up in the garage shop. So that's
And then
scary.
rock and roll shows up, and he is a
Rock and
shoot
roll.
first, ask questions never.
rock and
kind of guy.
roll.
What the fuck is happening?
So rock and
It
roll.
was fucking awesome.
So Duke and Clutch are just walking in the junkyard, just walking, and rock and roll shoots them up and screams, "Let's make some noise."
Yeah,
And that's
I love it.
that's how he takes in criminals, is just machine gun fire.
Machine gun.
well, they literally say, "Why hasn't he shoot us apart yet?" And they're like, "Oh fuck, he's like pushing us in a direction." So,
right.
like, you know, he
Okay.
knows
So
what he's
here's the thing. The other
knows
guy.
what he's
What's the
doing.
other guy's name? What's the other guy's name?
Stalker.
Roll and
Stalker and rock and roll.
Oh,
are the two
Stalker.
guys.
Stalker says we had to lure you away from all the civilians, and I'm like, they're in a fucking
What
junkyard. They're the
civilians?
only two.
Doing. Maybe the
people
girl's
there.
still there. Is the
The one
girl?
like,
girl.
what are you
yeah, maybe the
talking
girl
about?
was there.
I guess. I'm
Did
like,
she not
they're in the
leave?
most secluded place I could possibly think of. What are you talking about? That you're luring
Also,
them
if-
away?
She definitely leaves.
Yeah, but also if Duke and Clutch don't exactly react as they should have,
That's
would be
why he's
murdered.
guiding them with bullets.
But they would be murdered dead if they didn't exactly react as they
He
should.
knows
have.
who he's after.
Also,
He
as
even
he,
compliments him later.
but the other thing is, as he's just finger down on the trigger, automatic Vulcan gunning everything, he's just screaming nonsense. Surf's up, bros. Catch some waves. Let's make noise. It's all nonsense.
Yeah, he's just fucking around. Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah,
But if his name is rock and roll, shouldn't all of his catchphrases be music lyrics?
no.
Why is the
I think he
surf-based?
thought it was cool.
Why is it all surf-based commentary when he's rock and roll?
Because he does
That's
the
fine.
rock and roll
'Cause he-
sign. He does the rock
'cause
and
he
roll
is-
sign
He is a
when he's
surfer.
firing his gun.
All right, hold on, guys.
Why doesn't he just make music references instead of surf references?
The music is the bullets being fired. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, there he is. All right, Joe's
it rock and
holding up
roll?
a rock and roll
He does the
And it's-
yeah.
figure.
He
it
does
says-
the,
Hang 10 on his.
Hang 10. There it is. That's the surf, again, that's the surf reference.
You know
not
why?
rock
Because
and
there's been different versions of him over the years. So like they've kind of there's one version of him that has like long hair and he's more of a surfer guy than less of like the and they've kind of like smashed that together as like one character recently, and then this book kind of like ran with that version of the character. So that's
I
why
wanna-
he's saying both things. Kind of.
Again, apologies to the podcast listeners, our YouTubers.
There's like a deep history with these characters, so they're kind of like amalgamating like some of the best parts of like.
I just
the
want to
best runs of the
highlight
characters.
what I mean about enjoying this comic genuinely and ironically at the same time is this panel of just a close-up of the rock and roll
Yes.
fingers, a sick smile on his beard, and just boom, 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 boom as he is machine gunning. It's just nonsense. It's unreal.
I think
fantastic.
the thing about rock and roll is that he is, again, to Al's point, like if none of this was done without irony, it's kind of insane because I feel like he's just the epitome of everything that used to be considered masculine, especially in the 90s and 80s, like rolled into one, the rippling muscles and just the huge gun, and he has the bullets all over. It's almost bondage. But for me though, he's like so surface masculine that if this is like, for a gay kid, this is the same as like a fucking woman with big tits in a bikini, like shooting he's so masculine and strong that he's like he was made to be in gay porn. Like the tattoos, that nothing about it. It's like it's too. I
too
hope they're
much.
poking fun. It's too much. Like it's like I can remember being a kid and seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger's.
I don't know if they're
big
poking
tits
fun
hanging
so
out.
much as like.
It's got to be right. It's got
Drawing on
his
these, like,
character in particular is.
Right. Oh yeah, some of the G.I. Joe characters obviously get even sillier. At least these guys are mostly just like military dudes. You know what I mean? Like they get more insane for sure.
I
Like,
also
there's some insane fucking G.I. Joe characters, but like these
Like
are the ones that are just
Backlash.
like we wear green, we shoot guns, you know, like kind of thing. Like these are the soldiers.
but an art note I want to make about Reilly is so the introduction we get to rock and roll is done kind of cool. How as Duke and Clutch are talking, we get obviously a rippling, just a vein, almost like a dick vein, just running down this dude's forearm as he clunks down a boombox. And then we see his tattooed, because he's rock and roll, so his tattooed hand putting on headphones. And then we see his hand holding this bullet chain. Like we get these little panels hinting at what's about to come.
Like
and then we
music
get the
starts
full
playing.
page
Yeah.
blast
Yeah.
of shooting. So again, it's just it's ridiculous, but also
That being said, like again,
art-wise,
art-wise,
it's done
like
kind of
watching
well.
the
It's
shells
no-
and the little
that-
the casings
yes.
come out, and like the way the fire is shaped, and the boom 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 in the background of the onomatopoeias, and like just fucking great job. Like just looks great. I mean, like I know it's also ridiculous, but like just man,
But that's what
like
I
I,
mean.
said,
it's-
like the art did a lot more than half of the work here, getting me to like be super engaged and love this book. And it's not just like G.I. Joe nostalgia talking. This is just like really good art.
But that's what I mean.
Like, I
where
love to see him draw
it's-
anything else.
But that's what I mean. Where like this art embraces the insanity and does
Mm-hmm.
it like almost tastefully, given the
Yeah.
sort of sarcastic ridiculousness of what it's doing.
Yeah. Side note,
Well, and
this
they-
artist does carry into the actual G.I. Joe book. Like Scarlet and Destro and Cobra Commander are all drawn by different people. Those books leading into the G.I. Joe book as well as Duke. But Duke's artist, Tom Reilly, does carry into the G.I. Joe book. So this is the book. He's the artist on the main book after this too.
He's
So
good.
that's another reason I was like, I'm gonna keep reading this. You know what I mean?
Even the blocking that Al just described, like they do that a few times where the main action or the dialogue that's happening is in bigger panels, and the smaller panels is something else that's going on in the background. I think they do it with Duke's flashback to Starscream. They do it in the scene Al just described, and then when we get to it, the prison break scene, they do it again, and it's
and something
Well,
we mentioned in
also-
the Transformers episode is the pacing was like breakneck and almost too crazy. And this is fast pacing, but there's beats taken to like slow it down a little bit. And I don't know if it's just because it's Duke on his own that makes it more okay, like it fits into the story better. But like for instance, just him meeting up with Clutch, and he's like, "I'm really fucking injured," and they're like, "Let's take some time, drop some bullets in a tray," like classic, like clink clink, and dropping the bullets in a little bloody tray, and like, that kind of shit. And like they take beats between action pieces, and it seems like you get a little bit more breathing room in this book than the Transformers book. But at the same time, the pace is still fast, and I really enjoy it. So it's like this is like the enjoyable breakneck pace to me.
Well, this
Yes,
is, but I think it's
100%.
because this is fast paced, but it's a standard action film fast pace.
Yeah.
Transformers
Okay.
was somebody throwing up into a toilet fast pace. It's just insane. It's all coming out. It's just insanity all
It's
coming
all
out.
coming
There's no actual pacing.
It's all coming
This
out.
is kind of a standard fast
It's
paced
someone
action flick. Pacing.
ripping diarrhea and throwing up. It's coming out of both ends.
Yeah, and they're
Exactly.
and they're shitting and then getting up and throwing up and then turning around and shitting, and it's just there's no stopping it. It's all wild. This is more. This is just a fast paced action flick. But to Patrick's point, we also get to a smaller scale. Our intro to Stalker in this scene is we see the scope get the vehicle in view.
Oh yeah.
And then we see Stalker with a sniper rifle shooting. So it's the same kind of foreshadowing.
Right. Which
with
happens
the
right as
locking
Duke's
of
realizing that rock and
gonna
roll is
happen.
hurting them and not actually trying to shoot them.
And he shoots out a tire and they crash, and then they are able to apprehend both.
Yeah, I
Duke
love the like.
and
So Clutch is kind of like on the steering wheel, and he's like, he goes, "Come back to bed, Sherry," and he goes, "Now you remember her name." I thought that was kind of funny. But then, like Duke trying to take out Stalker's kind of fun here, and I know, yeah, sure, Duke's like not in the best shape right now, but like,
I also like
there's a little like foreshadowing, or not maybe foreshadowing, but just like hint of history here, where Stalker classically was with Snake Eyes in Vietnam, and obviously they're not going to do Vietnam in this book because it's set in modern times, but but like Snake Eyes is obviously the one who taught him how to do that badass roundhouse.
Oh,
I
and he
did
goes,
wanna
my friend taught me
mention-
this. So it was just like a little bit of an allusion to the old G.I. Joe comics, and then like the relationship he had with Snake Eyes back in the day, like, and then clearly that relationship still exists. We just haven't seen how it works in this iteration, but.
And I
thought
did
that
want
was
to
a little-
mention
that was
this is
pretty
the first kick. I think this is the first martial arts kick we see. So it was kind of a fun. So far, it's
think
been
so.
mostly fists and just kind of surviving.
and pew
Now we get
pews.
a cool little kick.
Yeah. So they capture Duke and Clutch, and they take them to the pit, and the pit is classic 80s G.I. Joe headquarters for you guys that don't know that. But I love the little comment of like the pit. I thought this place was decommissioned in the 80s. That was kind of a fun nod. And then like, also, I just love the bisection of the pit itself, which again reminds me of like Tintin and stuff. Like if they'd had like a rocket ship in Tintin, like they'd do the scene where
It's
like,
very Tintin.
it's
Yeah, where you
bisected
see
and
the
you could
whole-
walk all
yeah.
the way up the stairs, and they would do
Yeah.
so like they don't quite do them walking through the scene like they would in a Tintin comic or anything like that. But like I loved the bisection of the pit that like led
They
around.
also that's another. I mean, obviously it's a reference, but Aha in Hawkeye that we've talked about also did a lot of cross section.
That's true. Yeah.
Movement and daily
also,
life through a cross
what's the guy's name that drew the recent run on Nightwing? Redondo. Yeah, he did a lot of that.
All right, the pit.
Mm.
So we
That's
meet
it.
a very. So Baroness is a very Scarlet Widow. Very Scarlet Widow, right? Black Widow. Black Widow. Jesus.
Scarlett Johansson.
But there's also a character named Scarlet in G.I. Joe, right?
That's correct. but
Yes.
that's not her.
And Scarlett Johansson plays Black Widow.
And Scarlett
who is not
Johansson
Scarlet
and
Yes.
and Scarlet Witch. It is very confusing. I always think
but I meant Black Widow. I meant that the
The
Baroness,
Baroness is very much a
very
Black Widow
Black
type
Widow.
character. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess she's like more like vaguely Eastern European and not specifically Russian, maybe. But like, I don't know. I don't really know exactly. I think I think in old comics, I think they like made up a country, kind of like they do in comic books. But maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Like Bialistan or whatever. Where's the Queen Bee from? Bial.
And then Destro,
Biala,
so classically, she's on Cobra.
Yalia.
Like she's a bad guy.
Bialia, that's it.
So for readers that know who she is, you're just like, oh shit, Baroness is there. That's fucking crazy. But like, if you don't know who she is, you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, she's sort of a femme fatale type, but is saying, hey, why don't we break out of here?
And she's trying to seduce Duke, and Clutch is having none of it. He is having
because Clutch is getting a little protective.
a little protective.
Of Duke, if you ask me.
Nothing
I
wrong.
do also want to ask you, Joe,
Mm-hmm.
what is Mercer's job description? Like, what do you think his job title is?
In
Because
this,
we get a scene of him. We get a scene of him just carrying stuff, like just
He's just doing his portions, Al. He's
like
doing his
furniture,
job, you know?
like
Just
furniture
helping.
moving.
He's getting his
boxes.
guys. He's the guy. He leads from the front, you know. Like if all his guys are having to pick up crates and move them out of a certain installation, he's gonna help them pick some stuff.
But I
up
don't
and move it.
understand, because when we first meet him, we're given the impression he's maybe head of security or
Sure,
head
for
something like that.
an evil terrorist organization.
Yeah, and now in this
Sure.
scene, he is loading up trucks with cargo.
He seems to be Destro's number
They
two
have
and
to
doing
move
whatever he
because
needs
they
to do.
know they
Yeah.
know where they are. They gotta get
gotta
out
move.
of there, Al.
But
They gotta
why-
move.
Don't they have people to load?
That means all
trucks
hands
that
on
aren't
deck.
the-
Yes.
Al. That means everyone has to work. Even number
The big
two.
muscle
Even the number
guy.
two.
I just
Masteron or whatever his name is.
the company I work at, if we had to move offices, the CTO wouldn't be loading the truck.
Well, that's because you
with
don't.
gear.
Your
Well-
CTO isn't as cool as Mercer. You know,
Yeah.
he's just not a good guy.
Mars is, employee satisfaction is like 95%.
Yeah, that's why they all.
Also,
Everyone
okay.
loves working there.
And another
They all
question
do.
I have. Okay,
They get
another,
to work on cool shit like making tanks and shit, and then blow
Okay.
shit up.
I have another.
And free
Organ-
childcare. They just bring their kids to work and they have
I
free
get it. You guys are
childcare.
right. You guys
Yeah.
are right. I take it back. I have another organizational question.
Yes.
What is Major Blood's position, and why is he sitting in the fire throne that Destro
It's just
was
blood.
sitting in?
It's just blood.
Blood. It's blood. It's not blood.
But also,
blood.
no, it's not blood. They're not. First of all, they would never make. They would just make it obvious.
Okay, like an umlaut little thing
It's
over
just
the
major
U or
blood,
something.
yeah.
Okay, this is blood. But why is blood sitting in
He's not.
Destro's
He's sitting
CEO
across
chair?
from Destro.
So there's multiple thrones in the fire.
He's
room.
on the other side of the fire.
You know what's funny? Because to me,
The fire
like,
room is not
Destro's
just
like
one chair.
Yale,
Destro's
it's like the Vicky
chair.
Bruce Wayne.
If you
You're
remember,
30 feet apart.
Destro's chair was like up in front of a lowered floor area, and it looks
This
to
is
me
the
like
panel.
he's sitting in the lowered floor area. I think he's letting a lower chair.
Okay, so he has the lower throne within the
Is a
fire
lower
ring.
chair,
Okay,
throne
within
chair,
the fire ring,
looking
and
within
Destro's
the
in a different
fire,
room.
looking up at Destro. I think is what's
He's also, I think, does Cobra have its own vineyards? Because the wine bottle looks like a Cobra branded wine
The
bottle.
wine.
I mean, that's probably
is
just
such
a joke.
weird touch. It's such a
Okay.
weird. If I was about to send some assassin on this big mission, I'd be like, why are you getting wasted right now? I'm telling you to go take down the most deadly
He's had time to
American
sober
asset
up on
ever
whatever
created.
helicopter ride he's gone on.
He's also, let's talk about, so this panel that, if you're looking at YouTube, it's on the thing, but also I'm showing it here. So Blood is, he apart from the insane look in his eyes, is like
Mhm.
sexually biting his lip
Mhm.
at the prospect
lot
of
of-
going,
yes.
whatever. It's just,
He's
there's
clearly
lot
a
happening
sadist,
in all
which
of
I
this.
think is fine.
Look at that
But
gun
is he a
as well.
sadist
It's
or
so
is he a
big.
capitalist? Because he's just doing it for money. Apparently, money is his thing.
Yeah, but he clearly likes getting paid by people that like to let him kill.
I don't know, man. He gets shot in the fucking eyeball and he's still like, whatever. I mean, he might be one of those people where like pain is just really enjoyable for him. I could see
Could
that
be.
for sure.
He going back to Reacher. He has a Jack Reacher gun. Reacher has like a giant barrel revolver gun.
Yeah,
that gun
so
is
some of
him.
the silly shit that you'll see in this book is clearly like that's the toy. That's the gun he comes with as the toy. It doesn't make
Oh, yeah,
sense per se,
totally.
like in the story, but like that's just what you're buying into when you watch.
You know what? You're right,
Jack.
because that gun caught my attention, and every time I saw that gun, I was like, "That gun is insanely large." But if I was a little kid, I'm like, that's the gun I would expect to
Yeah.
come with this action figure.
You're right.
So-
You're right.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the gun.
Good job.
I think, like,
Can
I
you
would go-
can you imagine buying a Major Blood toy that doesn't feature a gun?
Mhm.
Yeah, not now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't.
Or a
What
glass
are you
of
going
wine.
to do with that? Yeah. But so then during the nighttime now in prison, so Baroness is trying to talk Duke into escaping. Are those prescription eyeglasses? What are those?
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you for
to
bringing
my
that up. 'Cause
knowledge,
I'm like,
they're prescription
those-
eyeglasses.
But they're weird. They're a crazy, like insane. Okay,
That I don't
They're-
know about.
wait,
this
Joe,
specific-
wait,
they're
you
made
don't-
by the same people who came to kill them all. They all have the same glasses on as well. It's the same shape. I didn't know.
they
it was
are the
happening.
same
Well,
glasses.
so she classically wears glasses in
Everybody.
the comics.
Everybody. These are the same glasses the reporter wears in Batman Forever at the gala when she's interviewing Bruce Wayne. She's like, Bruce, who's this beautiful woman you're with? What's going on? Those are the same. She has these crazy pointed glasses just like Baroness is wearing.
And then she's like, tell me, Duke, do you like the Thurkif?
Do you like the Thurkif? I just wanted to mention Batman Forever, but it's very that character. Also,
before we get to that though, there's a real quick, like, again, like Stalker's like, permission to speak freely, sir. And he's like, oh, yeah, go ahead. He's like, I don't like this. Like, why is Duke down there? Like, I don't understand what we're doing. Like, you know, clearly, and in the last issue, he even says to Duke, like, what the fuck are you doing, man? You can't be on the run. Like, you need to get on the other side of this. Like, trust General or like Colonel Hawk. Like, he'll get you through this. Like, blah blah blah. And he's like, fuck, like I trusted him before, and he like doesn't think of it rationally. But it's interesting to see like they're already kind of on his side, even though they're not technically on his side.
I did like,
but then we get to Baroness's backstory / her trying to convince Duke to break out of the prison.
And then then pretty soon
Clutch
after
goes,
that,
why? Clutch goes, why am I here?
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're like
aiding
and
abetting a fucking criminal, you idiot. And he goes,
but I want to say, in Clutch's defense, he hadn't really aided or abetted yet. Like Duke had just.
I mean, they jumped into a vehicle and drove away. That's pretty much like.
Okay, in Clutch's defense, Joe, nobody showed up with a warrant or any demand. They just started shooting.
They were on his land.
They just started shooting, and Clutch got in a car.
That's why they herded him off the property so they could arrest him.
Oh, that would be a better. You're right. That would have been interesting.
I mean, you know, just read between the lines, guys.
I just mean it's hard to say. Well, you aided and abetted, so we took you in, when like all he knows is I was shot at by a machine gun and drove away from that.
Yeah, that's true.
And is that aiding
and
and
my friend
abetting,
came to
or
me
is
with
that
bullet
surviving?
wounds that I patched up.
Is
but all that
surviving?
can be,
Anyway, Baroness, she's hot and she's got glasses.
And she's a crazy assassin who's
not getting along.
No, they're not.
Also, this little full-page spread here of Baroness's background is again just classic spy movie, action movie. You know, multiple passports, classified files. It's just all classic James Bond spy, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's who she is. You know, I mean, like in a comic where you're being introduced to that character now, it seems like so by rote and like done.
No, I mean, I love it. I think it's a great art, like
but like back when it was made, you know, sure that happened every once in a while, but there wasn't a million of those characters.
No, but I wanted to highlight that spread as I just think it's a cool art note of just sort of like here's
cool,
just an of the time 60s spy shit. Just
I like the series of Polaroids that are just chalk outlines of different places she's murdered people.
Yeah.
It's just,
it's great.
They don't even have person's name. It's just Istanbul, Paris, Moscow. Like she's killed people all over the world.
All right, and then blood.
Duke's trying to kind of having like a I don't know, crisis of PTSD over his dead friend, and she finally like kind of lights a fire under him and is like, oh fine, I guess you're just giving up. He's like, I'm not giving up. And he's like, there you go, there's the one, that's what I'm looking for, you know, kind of thing. So she's just like throughout this conversation slowly working him up, kind of thing.
Yeah, she's antagonizing him to get a rise out of him to help her escape. And this is where Clutch does two things. I'm not going to read the other panel because it's not as interesting, but this line in particular really threw me off because if Baroness is trying to get a rise out of Duke and Clutch says, let me tell you something about my boy here, Baroness. He's angry now, but he never turned his back on his duties. This life is in his blood. His whole family has fought in every war in every country. My bro here was made in America by America. Like,
boom, mic drop. Mic drop.
Like, if I was Duke, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Who are you?
What? Like,
are we best friends still?
Like, it's definitely, I think Clutch is more into the best friendship than Duke is. It just seems like Clutch is a little too.
I get it. Look, Duke. You know? Yeah,
Have
Duke
you seen how cool Duke is, Patty?
He is
but I
pretty
mean,
cool.
also Duke is like, bro, you're an acquaintance I reached out to because I needed
I
tech help.
You were
And,
close
you know,
by.
and Clutch.
I
is
met
just-
you before the army, so they didn't know that you
He
were.
even goes. Clutch even goes like, "Why don't you get your brother involved?" Or like, and he's like, "Oh, it'd be too that they'd look there too quickly." I'm here because we're friends, but not close enough that they would look here right away.
Yeah, he outright says, "I'm here because you don't mean enough to me to
Yeah.
where somebody would look."
I mean,
here.
he basically says that out loud. Yeah.
And Clutch is the
Anyway,
opposite. Clutch is, "You mean everything to me."
I love
opposite.
the vehicle showing up to like the armed transport to like transfer the prisoners, and it shows up and it just rolls in and they're shot already. I did like kind of love that. Classic dumb movie action movie thing, but like just they're already shot in the vehicle, just like and Stalker's like, what the fuck?
I also love that Stalker and Rock and Roll refer to each other as Rock and Roll and Stalker. They're
They
not
all
like
go by their code names, man.
they don't say like, "Hey Bobby, get back in there."
X-Men.
He just goes, "Rock and Roll."
Yeah, they're
Get
the
ready.
X-Men. Yeah, that's the superhero part of it. You're just gonna have to get past.
Yeah, but so Blood and his people arrive. I want real quick, the Blood and Duke confrontation. So does Blood have a metal arm or does he have a metal gauntlet thing? Do you know?
He has
I feel like
he has
he
a
must-
Winter Soldier mechanical arm.
He has the full metal arm. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's more than just
Also-
an arm, right? Because he gets run over by a big truck later, and he's fine. Like,
Yeah, he probably took.
is he like a
probably took most of
cyborg
that
or
in his-
something?
It's just the arm, to my knowledge, but
Oh,
But I also like how he and Duke are fighting close combat, and then he takes his gun out and shoots Duke, and he says, "Gotcha!" Like it's like you shot a dude a foot away. Like, yeah, you got him, bro. How do you miss?
yeah.
But he acts like, "Oh, I did it. You know, I gotcha."
Leading up to that,
buddy.
I do love the one page of like just rumble, and then like they're all in their cells, and they're like, "Oh shit." You know, like as the fighting's starting, like they don't really know what's going on up there, but like they're just like, "Ah, fuck."
yeah.
You know, before it travels down to them. That was
Also, Duke. I mean, during this whole fight, Blood is again biting his lip like he's holding in an orgasm, like he's trying not to come. You know, he's just like, I've got to hold out for one more minute. He's just biting his lip sexually that whole time. Also, when Duke punches Blood, and he kind of like hurts his hand, and he says, "What?" with like there's like explosions behind him. And when I read that, I heard the Metal Gear Solid 1 soldier going, "What?" and Tenchu also does that. He goes, "What?" You know,
What?
that kind of Tenchu Metal Gear Solid, like
What
those
am I saying?
stealth
What
games.
way?
Well, those stealth games where they go,
Whiskey
"What?
will be my safe
What's
word.
that? What's that?" Oh, it's just a box.
The one thing I want to put about this fight is that it starts because Blood punches Duke in the back of the head,
He does
Duke-
punch him in the back of the head.
Yeah,
That's
so
his
Duke
regular
says,
hand, by the way.
Well, I just want to
What kind of
ask
man
if,
sucker punch?
well, if Duke was
What?
such a great soldier, how does he not see somebody walk up behind him and punch him in the back of the head? How do you not notice a metal
I mean, they're
man?
a little distracted with
Metal.
everything. You know why? It's
He's a
'cause
metal
it's
man
right.
stomping towards you.
Well, it's right when Baroness is running away, so he's probably a little distracted.
Oh, I actually.
And then he's like, "Clutch, are you okay?" And then he's like, "Yeah, we gotta get out of here." And then he gets punched.
Actually, that cleavage shot of Baroness, I get why he might be distracted. If you know,
Yeah,
if
he's
you
a
know what
little
I mean.
distracted.
If you know what I mean.
I do like how
I'm
Baroness
I'm
is
kidding.
like, I'm gonna go-
Everybody. Also, I'm joking. Everybody in this comic is gay. He wouldn't be looking at Baroness.
I know.
I'm joking. Everybody in this, everything is very gay coded. By gay coded,
He's
I mean
very
everybody
much-
is just gay.
He's very much looking at Clutch and Rock and Roll. He's not focused on Baroness at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
I
that's
think-
before.
doing her
That's
best.
before.
Back to Patrick's point about Rock and Roll looking like a gay porn actor. During this comic, I kind of wanted to ship Duke and Rock and Roll. I just want to see them like in a porn sense, just fuck, because I think they sort of need to. I think.
I mean,
All
there's
right.
a reason I love the fuck out of G.I. Joe, you know? But what were you saying? What kind of man sucker punches somebody in the back of the head? Yeah, I love that.
Okay, yeah. So
He,
says,
says
"What kind of man
ridiculous
sucker punches
shit.
him?"
His lines are like Captain America and the Ultimates. Like
They
the
are
shit
very-
comes
they're
out of his
very
mouth.
real-
Okay,
Yeah, but
that's
they're
what I was
very-
getting to,
yeah.
but not in the way you're saying. He
it's
says that,
fantastic.
and then Blood says, "I do whatever it takes to win," and that reminded me of Ultimate Captain America
That is an ultimate.
killing the Russian super soldier and saying,
Mhm.
"Fighting is only about winning." And I was like, "Oh,
Right.
Ultimate
This-
Captain
Yeah,
America.
because in this book, the bad guy says that.
Right. In Ultimates, he's the hero. No, but this is very much an Ultimate Captain America versus a traditional Captain America.
He's also
It
not
is very
saying.
much so, yeah.
He's also not just saying what to hitting the metal arm, Al. He's also saying what to the fact that Blood just confessed to like murdering all the nerds and Dr. Burkhardt. So he's like, "That was you," you know, like kind of. It's more of like a.
Oh no! What? Yeah, I mean, what was the
Yeah.
response to the reveal that he killed everybody?
Well,
Yeah,
also
but-
the metal arm. I think his hands.
well,
He's
yeah.
like, "What?"
it's probably like.
But I liked the duality of that panel. It was
But
fun.
also
and then
this-
Baroness
this panel
blows
too- Well, time out.
Blood's
Another
eyeball
art
out.
note. But
Yeah.
this panel here, Duke almost has like a Popeye grimace to his face there, which was kind of an interesting choice too. But and you're right. And then
Again,
Baroness.
It's so gay though. It's so gay because the gun in his face, like I don't know. Everything is. So
You mean
gay.
it's like a dick in his face, and he's about to? Is that okay?
He's about to get the money shot.
Maybe you're reading too. I don't know, but maybe you're reading a little too much into that.
I mean,
Maybe
they
I
are,
just see what I
maybe.
they
see.
are
Maybe it's
guns
the
are
truth.
very
I don't
phallic
know.
objects.
Guns are dick. I mean, guns are dicks.
Guns are dicks. Everyone knows that.
Did anybody else think Baroness just shot Blood in the head?
Yeah, he did. She did.
Yeah, it doesn't look like.
No, but she
Just not from
grazed
the right
the
angle to
side
get
of
all of his
head. Like,
brains,
I
I
thought
guess.
she
Yeah.
legit just killed him.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it's
Through
meant
the
to
head.
look like.
They make it very obvious later though that it like.
Oh yeah,
skinned
that
this-
it like. Well, it looks like it goes in.
Yeah,
I
I mean, this
like
the
there's
original
there's a
panel-
puncture.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the silhouette looks like she just murdered him. You know,
Yes,
in and
yeah.
out, he's dead.
Yeah.
But then it turns out it was just a graze.
Well, I think it's like. Well, I don't think of it again. I don't think it was a graze. I think part of his brains went with that eyeball. But
I don't know.
You know.
I do
don't
want
know,
to
they
say
make
so.
it drawn later. It kinda
well,
looks like it's
if I
skinned.
have the panel, we'll look at it later or the next issue. But like Baroness betraying Duke, or like, well, not betraying, but kind of like flipping the coin and being like, "Oh, he said you're worth a lot of money. You're my ticket out of here again," kind of thing, is like not surprising to anybody that's read G.I. Joe or anything. But like, I think when the relationship continues to go, it does become interesting. But we don't
Yeah,
really
and-
see much of that. In this
And
book.
Baroness, in the meantime, Baroness has changed into her Black Widow outfit.
That's
Yeah, she
what
went
I'm
and got her
saying.
And
gear.
she's full on
Yeah.
zip. She's full on zipping it up as she shoots. In a very, I know we do the Bechdel test and we try to be very progressive, but this is a very kind of, again, just espionage, like very horny sex pot, femme fatale.
It's also
woman
very like
zipping
James
her
Bondy
cat
movie
suit
kind
up
of thing,
as-
where like
yeah.
they're just immediately in their gear. Like it's just like, you know, like, oh, we're done with these scientist costumes, so we throw them away and we're suddenly wearing our gear again. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Kind of silly cartoon kind of way.
But
Which
but
which I
also
think
the-
is kind of funny and
yeah,
also,
but the pose
you know,
too,
whatever.
also very James Bond. The first panel is the silhouette of kind of her hip and holding the gun, and then the next
Mm-hmm.
panel is her zipping up the cat suit. It's just very 60s sexualized, you know, Bond, female spy kind of. Maybe it's not specifically Bond, but that kind of
Mhm.
genre, right? Generally, looks great. Still got the glasses. It's a good look. Looks great. I think it's a good look.
It's a good look. It's a good
Yeah.
look. All right, issue number 4. The fight continues. So we have Stalker up top, who apparently has been holding off God knows how many men. Well, and also they've gotten past him because they're already downstairs fighting. But like, Stalker's up top and is like trying to call for help, and he's like, "Fuck, this isn't working." So you see him come down, start to make his way downstairs to like join them, I guess. Although Rock and Roll and Clutch are fighting troops, and then like while Duke and Baroness have like a conversation, Stalker comes up out of nowhere, and I like, just art note wise, love the panel where Stalker's knife is against her throat, but / throat armor. But the very next panel, there's like a very sizable like cut in her throat, in her
Yeah.
like neck armor, and I was just like, I love that. That's little art cues like that throughout this book is just fantastic. And it's such a subtle little thing, like, you know what I mean? Like his knife was there, but it doesn't look like it's cutting it. And then the next panel, it's like a little pizza
No,
slice.
it does.
cut out of
It's
her.
literally cutting it though. In that
Yeah, it's like
panel.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next, I just loved it.
But I like what that reveals about Stalker's character, because even though he was threatening her, it was more for the shock, because you see he's not actually cutting her throat at all. It's
Yeah.
just-
He's just warning her, and he's like, and also
Yeah.
his dialogue is just back away from Duke, inmate. He's like, I'm here.
Right,
I'm
but
this warden of this little tiny jail.
Yeah,
so
but I
like,
just wanted to say I like the character beat for Stalker, that he's not actually threatening to murder this woman. He's just saying, hey, snap out of it, don't do this kind of thing. Which is not to say, obviously, I don't at all condone holding a knife anywhere near a woman. Neither does the Mobius Couch or anyone I represent. But I just wanted
even
to
if
make that point.
if it's a Black Widow type assassin.
No,
friend.
no. Under no circumstance does the Mobius Couch condone holding a knife at or near a woman.
Sure.
No. Okay. We just want to say that, right?
I mean, if it's no, okay.
Okay.
You can use blunt objects like Daredevil or
no.
Sure. Yeah.
Like
remember when Batman just punched Catwoman in the back of the head and during
okay, that is also activity the Mobius Couch does not condone or support.
All right. But
it's okay for Elektra to like stab Daredevil with her side.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine. And actually, some men would pay a lot of money for that kind of action.
I mean, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So they decide to go deeper into the pit.
Yeah, because they figure out, obviously Blood's forces are attacking the top. And so their answer is, well, why don't we go deeper? It's Inception. Let's go deeper. It's the only way out. And they find little vehicles.
Duke opens up a door and says, this is where we're going to make our last stand. It's only when the door opens up and they're like, oh, shit, we have tanks?
Yeah.
They're like, all right, never mind.
This goes back into the selling toys thing of, oh, look, we each found a vehicle for ourselves.
Oh, this is classic. Sell. Well, also the vehicles in question are like literally classic 80s toys. These are all toys.
But again, because
even the Jeep that they drove out when Stalker and Rock and Roll captured them in the first place was a toy.
I'm sure.
Like they're all toys.
I'm sure. But I just mean even here, it's still this idea of here's another toy you can buy. Look at this jet.
It's more like here's a toy you had when you were a kid in this situation. But
right. But that's what I mean. Like obviously they're kind of ironically turning that on its head, but it's still a reference to that idea of like here's a vehicle we can package with this character and you can buy kind of thing.
On that note, if they start making more toys representing some of the things that aren't currently in G.I. Joe with some of these characters, I will buy them.
And this is when we find out that
like Blood doesn't have troopers. Give me some of those, G.I. Joe. What are you doing?
Get those Blood troopers. Well, we do find out that Blood wasn't shot directly through the head, but kind of skimmed through like the side.
Yeah, I don't know. Like again, that wound on the back over his ear does kind of look like it's an.
I'm not sure what the bullet trajectory was because it looks like it grazed all of it, but also went into. I'm not sure what the trajectory.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Maybe it's. Do you remember the James McAvoy movie Wanted, which was based on the Millar?
Yeah, she curved the bullet around his skull.
Maybe she curved the bullet. In this, like in that movie.
At any rate, they don't have any ammo, and they hilariously drive their vehicles up and start beating people up with the vehicles.
And Clutch,
the best part of the whole book.
Well, also as they drive out, Clutch screams, "Demolition Derby time, baby!"
Yeah, he referenced that in issue 2.
This dude has a bachelor's degree from MIT. How can he drive a tank?
He's a genius.
He's not driving the tank. He's driving the.
He's driving the transport truck.
He's driving the transport. Yeah.
Okay.
Clutch could totally drive a tank. Just like,
but he doesn't have any military training.
Fly a jet.
Does he have military?
Clutch knows Duke from the military. they're all. military.
They didn't explain that. I just thought he was an MIT grad that he knew.
I thought they were childhood friends or something. Because Duke specifically says he went to Clutch because he predates his time in the military or something. But I thought it was weird that they all suggested Duke at different points to turn himself in. And then Duke's like, no. And they're like, okay. But I just thought it was
your choice, bud.
Well, because Duke is a really cool American, awesome guy, and if he doesn't want to,
he's a man of action, guys.
Maybe he should.
No, I mean,
it's one of the first lines.
Like, I wouldn't even suggest that he should turn himself. I'm like, you just did turn yourself in.
Like after all of this,
like, why would you suggest that again?
I understand, Pat. Like, this is what Patrick's trying to say. If Joe showed up at my doorstep at 3 a.m. all
Mhm.
haggard looking, saying, "I need help," my reaction wouldn't be, "Joe, why don't you turn yourself in?"
Yeah.
You know, my reaction would be
What's
like,
say
"Why
that
don't we
turned himself in?
let's let's figure it out." But like, my initial reaction wouldn't be, "Have you tried turning yourself in?" Which is what every one of Duke's friends seems to just fall back on. Like, well, have you talked to the authorities? Which is
I
maybe,
think
you know.
after like Rock and Roll and Stalker are like technically on their side at this point. I think he's saying like, I feel safe if you turn yourself in at this point to these people. Like, we've done this thing together, and therefore, like, I have a level of trust that says like you'll be okay if we just start working within the confines of whatever is going on.
All right, but so Duke
But
flies
Duke's like,
off.
I have to see this through, and he flies off. Yeah,
Yeah, because he's in the jet, because he's a jet.
fly jet.
He's a jet person.
Everyone in G.I. Joe can just
So he
jump
flies
into the
away.
skyscrapers at any time and fly around. Have you watched the cartoon?
And this
It doesn't make any sense. I'm just saying.
And then this is
They all jump in the jets.
At Destro's base. This is where we see the full GIMP setup, where like he's in a suit with just a BDSM fucking mask and a collar. And
you know, it's funny. So there's like a really like, well, the funny part is like this is like subdued for Destro. He's wearing a suit. You know, it's pretty low key Destro costume.
And tell me if I'm maybe reading too much. He's got this chain with a red medallion, which to me is like very indicative of almost a red ball gag in the mask. But like all of it was very BDSM coded. It was all very GIMP from Pulp Fiction coded.
I mean, again, you know, he wears the mask for honor, obviously.
He's taking the power back.
And he's extra rich.
Yeah.
And then he's got leopard print on the inside of his coat. Classically, there's a Destro repaint of a toy, and it's called Profit Director Destro. But like everyone that bought G.I. Joe toys when we were little, we just called him Pimp Daddy Destro because it was like literally like leopard print collar, and like it looked, and he was wearing pink, and it looked insane. Like, well,
he had
insane.
If you
even more insane than his regular costume. And I love the little subtle nod to that. Like, he's wearing like the pink-ish suit. I know it's kind of more red, but like it's there sort of, red. And then like, you know, and then the inside lining is the leopard print. And I was just like,
but he also in his flame throne room had a stuffed leopard, like a taxidermy leopard.
That's true. He did
in the room as well.
Another hint to that.
The medallion is just a lot. If you have a metal mask, you don't need a giant red medallion with a deep cut V.
That's just showing how rich he is. You know,
but the thing is, Patrick,
he's just dripping in jewels.
But the thing is, to him,
the wealthy man.
But the mask isn't the statement piece. The mask is him.
That's just him. Yeah.
The necklace is the statement piece, right? Because the mask is just who he is, right? Much like Batman is Bruce Wayne is the mask, and Batman is the Batman.
Right.
The mask is just
cares about that. No one cares about the symbolism. I don't care about that. It's ridiculous. It's too much Destro.
Anyway, Duke flies to the new location. Oh, Baroness escapes in the meantime. We forgot to mention that. Baroness just kicks somebody off of
They have these weird these open air helicopters.
Toy.
Right. But they're helicopters that are open air. Like there's no cockpit. It's just an open seat.
It's called a Fang helicopter.
What altitude do those hit? You want a pressurized cabin if you get high enough for like air travel.
What are you talking about? People are opening back doors on helicopters and action movies and jumping out the sides all the time. Like, when are you talking
about? But not okay. All right, whatever. That's fine. Anyway, Duke fights the robot.
Is it insane to not to have glass in front of you? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Pressurized?
Whatever.
Nah.
It's fine. Duke fights a robot with a claw arm.
This was an interesting.
Well, first Duke gets there and Scrap Iron blows him out of the sky, and then investigates the wreckage. Inexplicably, there's no organic matter in the wreckage. Like, they do not in any way go like, he got out before. Like, there's no parachute. There's nothing. It's just, plane blows up, Duke survives. That's it.
Well, he jumped out. You know how in the Fast and Furious movie, or basically any action movie, as they're driving 60 miles an hour, they open the door and roll out?
And just like roll out. Yeah.
He did that from
He probably just opened the glass.
Yeah, he rolled out.
And as the plane is engulfed in flame after getting hit by 2 missiles, and on its way to crash into a mountainside, he just tucked and rolled.
Yeah, and we're reintroduced to Duke as just entering he just climbed a Himalayan mountain peak into the garage. He just somehow cleaned up.
Yeah, I guess meanwhile, the time it took Scrap Iron to walk out and check the wreckage, Duke was going the other direction and climbs into the same open.
Yeah.
Like,
and then he
bay.
fights the claw arm robot. They've
Yeah.
built, using Energon transformer technology, I assume, they've built these claw arm robots.
Mm-hmm.
And then in
Issue
classic,
five.
okay, Patrick, that necklace is a lot. I'm on your side now. That's just a
Too
lot.
much.
That
It looks
is,
like it
I'm
needs to
look
be
at
able to
this
do
panel
something.
here. It is too much. It's too much.
Like, does it?
It's just a lot. It's half. It's chest sized. It is full. It's like a 6-inch vertical.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
on
Does
that.
he have a necklace on there?
He does
Yeah.
in that toy. That's the
Oh my
necklace in the
God.
toy. Yeah.
Yep. This is his usual outfit. This, and you know what? Interestingly enough, this is the outfit that you'd seen in all those scenes where he's sitting in a throne room. He was wearing this.
Yeah,
outfit.
he's wearing that
Which is
collar.
ridiculously ostentatious. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then so that's why I'm saying, like, if he's wearing a suit, this is like, that's like downplayed Destro. You guys are like,
Wait. So the giant
Destro-
Ruby's like always been part of his ensemble. Like,
I
since
guess.
the
Yeah.
80s? That's insane.
Yeah.
Did you see in the G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra movie, he gets a literally metal face.
Yeah, that's insane though.
Like his whole body.
Those movies
turns metal
are
or something.
insane.
He gets like an
If they made those
actually-
movies like this comic book was made, I'd be like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. in my
But they
life.
did the same thing in all the live action Fantastic Fours. Doom also gets an actual metal face, not a mask.
Yeah, you know why? Like classically in the cartoon, like for instance, I really liked the toy because it just like seemed like a frozen mask, you know. But in the cartoon, like he's opening his mouth and talking because it's a cartoon, you know. Like
Yeah,
so,
because
like,
there's a little slit.
and he's even doing that in this. Like he's opening
He
his
does-
mouth.
he
It's
does it.
inexplicable. It makes But like in reality, if you were to make a movie, it should just be a fucking mask, and he should be talking behind it like Darth Vader, you know, like kind of thing. Like it shouldn't be. I don't know what you're doing now. Freaking me out.
Well, that's what he does. He has a little slit.
No one
and he
wants
goes,
to see that.
in the little slit. Yeah.
Anyway, Colonel Hawk shows up and goes, "Where the hell is Duke?" And I do love the clutch scene of like him going like, "My third grade art teacher is scarier than you. I'm not telling you shit. I don't work for you." Subtle art note, but like the amount of fury that is on Colonel Hawk's face in that panel is fantastic.
Yeah.
Back to another thing. So as Destro kind of confronts Duke as he's fighting the robot,
Mhm. Yeah.
Conrad Hauser is a Nazi name.
It is, isn't it?
It is the name of a Nazi. Can we be honest here? Conrad Hauser. That is a Nazi officer's name.
He's
Tell me I'm wrong. I'm waiting to hear
he's
for, you know,
he's
I'm
blonde
waiting
hair,
for the
blue
debate.
eyed, born and bred in America by America.
He is Aryan blonde.
Yeah, he's
Conrad
not.
Hauser.
That's what I said. Blonde hair, blue eyed, Aryan. You know.
This dude would be the GI robot in Monster Commandos would murder this guy. If
No,
you
he
met him
wouldn't.
in real life. This dude
He's got
is
American
a
flags
Nazi.
tattooed on his
Yeah.
arms.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just wanted to make
you
that point. They could come up with a more American name than a Nazi name for Duke. Is all I wanted to say. John Williams,
Fair. You need to take that up with
Richard Smith,
with Larry Hama, who wrote all the file cards. I think
Bill Powers,
he made up all these characters basically.
Max Jennings, Tim
Max
Hooper.
Jennings.
I'm just coming up with names that aren't Nazi names, just off the top of my head like that. It's that easy to come up with a name that isn't a Nazi name.
You can't be of
And
German descent in America. We're a melting pot.
not if your name is Conrad Hauser.
His name is Conrad Duke Hauser.
That's a Nazi name.
No, I spelled Hauser wrong.
Okay. If your
Anyway,
name
yeah,
was
he's-
if your name was Rich Kleiman,
Basically,
that's fine. That's not.
they find out that their
Also,
new
we should edit that
location
out
has
'cause
also
that's
been
actually a
tracked.
sports agent's name. We should edit that out. But I mean, that's a German name that isn't a Nazi name. But Conrad Hauser is. Let's
Yeah,
go back
okay.
to what you were saying, Joe.
All right. What I was saying was, They figure out that they've been tracked a second time, essentially. That Duke followed them there, but also that somebody else is following them there. So they have to leave yet another location, and they decide to blow it all up. Which, again, I kind of enjoy. I think what I like about this comic is like the big action set pieces are still like. I mean, there's a lot of faceless troops for them to beat up and kill, but like it's between like a 4-ish, 5-ish guy fight. Like it's not like a huge G.I. Joe team yet. Like it's just Duke the comic, you know, like it's kind of him by himself and there's people around him. But I kind of enjoyed that the end scene was just him getting his ass handed to him by one robot, and then like Destro leaves to blow up the installation.
Well, they also
Didn't
so
though.
Destro,
He dominates that robot.
Well, I know that. Well, they left him to get beat up by the robot. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I didn't, you know, like they were like, this one fucking robot can handle him. He's like done.
Yeah.
Let's just
well,
get
he
the fuck
also
outta here.
so one part we skipped over is Destro does again. I think this is probably an homage to everything, but the usual villain of why don't you join me? Like,
Yeah.
just come to my
Yeah,
side.
well, I mean, I
you've been
think,
betrayed.
like-
It's the typical spy.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme
On
of
the
things, like
run
how do you
stuff.
get somebody to like fight for Cobra? Like where does Mercer come from? Like where does any of these people come from? Or like fight for, well, in this point, just Mars Industries, because you don't know anything about Cobra yet.
Well, sure, but I think this was a very conscious homage to that trope.
Yeah, sure,
in any
yeah,
kind of spy sort of hero on the run story. Let's talk about Duke's strength. So he rips a robot's spine out of the robot.
I mean, he's channeling the anger of his friend's death out of the hands of a robot. You know?
Yes, the scene's so interesting because it's almost kind of comical. It's, I think, played to be a little bit comical. He rips the robot's head off and the robot keeps going. He's like, you got to be kidding me. But then he kind of beats the robot to death with the robot's own spine and head. And he keeps having flashbacks to Starscream. So it's like this PTSD is happening. And then Duke has this extreme bias towards, like, he hates all robots.
He hates robots.
Which is
robots
understandable, but at the same time, like, it's kind of insane. It's like a weird. You kind of
He's
almost wanna
traumatized. This is Patrick. When you have trauma and
It's
you
trauma,
don't treat it through therapy, this is what happens.
That's what I'm saying. I understand why he's reacting this way, but at the same time, to see him lose his shit over this robot is not sentient like Starscream is. It's just like a, you know,
Yeah, it's just not
robot that.
It's just a soldier bot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also because after he beats it to death, he's exhausted and the robot's dead. And then
You
Duke's
know,
like,
there is
"I did it."
there's an
it's-
interesting note we need to hit here, and it's like Duke yells, "You killed my friend, you built that thing." I saw it transform out of a plane, and like Destro takes a beat and goes, "Interesting. I didn't build that." You know, like kind of thing, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like, so for him, it's like this entire thing has been about, he thinks he's on the right track of like figuring out who these transforming robots are that killed his friend, and he thinks like he's getting closer and closer to the people behind it.
But
And then
all he did
finds
was
out,
give
like,
Destro information. Yeah.
and then Destro just said like, "Well, that wasn't me, bud," you know, and he's like, "What?" You know, and I mean, like, that's a very integral plot point I think we need to hit before we go on, but
Well,
yeah,
just
him
after
beating
he
the shit out of the
kills
robot
after
is
he kills
insane.
the robot, he's out of breath and he says, "I did it," and then he kind of passes out next to the robot and says, "I got you, Frost. I got you. Let's go home." So it just, that sequence took me on a range of emotions where it was kind of comical, but then it was also kind of sad, and then it was also kind of like Duke it was cathartic for him to be able to champion over, like, he's proved to himself that he can possibly kill this thing that killed his friend. Like, I don't know. It was just kind of a well done scene to me where I was kind of.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually.
Well, it's also, again, going back to like
it weirdly, like the times that they're silly is there, the times that they're serious is also there, and I think that's what makes this so good.
And going back to homages and all that, do you all know A Quiet on the Western Front? With that, it was like a 1930s German novel about World War I, and it was very much like anti-war and all that. There was a famous movie from the, I think, 30s or 40s, and also they made a modern version of it. But one of the key scenes in that is this young German soldier murdering somebody for the first time, and in a trench, and like having to lie down next to that body to hide in the trench overnight. And so this scene of Duke, after he murders the thing, lying down next to it, is very much this is like it's been done since All Quiet on the Western Front. But I mean, that motif, again, that visual image of the murdering or dealing with murder and having to lie down next to the result of your murder it's just a very like visually visceral thing, and it's been done a lot of times throughout film and visual media and all that. So just wanted to
he's
call that
literally
out,
like
yeah.
lying on the arm of the robot. Like his head's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I do love that Destro is sitting bitch in that little 2-seater Jeep when they're leaving. Made me laugh.
Well, but rich people don't drive.
Also,
they have drivers.
Also a toy.
Yeah.
But you're sitting in the middle between giant Mercer and Scrap Iron? I'd be like, Scrap Iron. Sit in the fucking
Also, what is Destro? So
I'm taking the real seat.
Another thing about Destro, he's wearing loafers without socks. What is he dressed for? What is he? Because it's not business attire.
That's what made me laugh about that, because like the entire comic, he's wearing like his like what would be called like his battle uniform, like
right? And now he's in this casual.
Fight.
Now he's in a casual.
And now, like
suit.
when you finally see him, he's just wearing a suit, and I just thought that was funny because it's like so like he should have been wearing the suit the whole time, and then been like revealed in his like costume.
Well, so but I want to ask, what is he dressed for? Because he's not dressed for work in that suit. Like
he's dressed for moving his Mars installation building to the new installation hidden in the mountains.
I think he's dressed for like going out on a Friday night.
He's dressed to go out to like a nice restaurant after they settle in their new mountain house.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
There's probably a ski lodge nearby. He wants to have a nice dinner.
That makes sense.
Something like that.
I would, if it's winter near the ski lodge, wear socks, but okay.
I mean, and he's super rich. He steps out of the car and into the restaurant. The cold's never touching him.
I guess. I just don't know what that lifestyle is like.
Yeah.
We get a brief like Duke died, which is like, we all know he didn't die. but there's like a quick news montage of like, turns out it wasn't Duke. He's a hero spoken for by this guy named Colonel Hawk, whoever he is. And then it's like, turns out it was this terrorist guy named Sebastian Blood. You're just like, yeah, okay. Couldn't you have just said that when the civilians were killed in the first place? Not taking Duke in?
So I want to say
it was this guy.
I do.
Because Duke's secretly working for me, so it was this guy.
But I do want to go into the next hospital scene. I prefer Duke clean shaven, buzz cut over the sort of weird hippie look he had going on. Patrick, how do you feel about
even said he didn't recognize him,
How do we feel about Colonel Hawk, Patrick? He's kind of like a ripped Reed Richards.
I was about to say he's giving too much Reed Richards, so I think there's some bias there.
Okay, so you don't like. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah,
it's a bit Nick Fury as well. And I've never been a big fan of Nick Fury.
A little Nick Fury, a little. I mean, also a little just general kind of like '60s Mad Men vibe.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. A little bit of Rogue going on as well.
He's an old school. Yeah, but the white streak's new. That's new. Not the temples,
sorry,
the white streak.
Before we go on, I'm sorry, but I'm having like audio issues on my left. Do you guys hear that kind of buzzing that sort of does this pass the Bechdel test? The Bechdel test. The Bechdel test.
You know what's funny? I actually feel like I heard a little buzzing.
It's the Bechdel test. The answer is probably no. This one does not.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's close. It's a comic entitled Duke. You follow Duke the whole time. There's women in it. They don't talk to each other.
Well, I just want to say there's
3 women characters.
Well, they're both redheads.
What?
Isn't Baroness red hair?
No, she has black hair.
Wait a minute.
You're really conflating Black Widow with
I'm completely.
She has jet black.
She has black hair. I think it's the lighting confused me. It's black hair. Yeah, I think it's because they were in prison with like the blue lighting, and I didn't know if that was. Yeah, she doesn't have red hair. I was conflating it with Black Widow, who does.
Well, also Dr. Burkhart's just old and has gray hair,
which is fine. The Mobius
and then the third person, CoverGirl, which we don't even really get an introduction to, I don't think, but she's there talking to Colonel Hawk a lot throughout the issue, and she has red hair.
Only one red hair. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It does not pass the Bechdel test.
Not at all.
None of this passes the Bechdel test.
Not even remotely close.
Yeah.
Like, CoverGirl talks to Colonel Hawk, Baroness talks to Duke and other dudes, and then separately from everything, Dr. Burkhardt talks to Duke mainly, and that's it. So there's no, If anything, Dr. Burkhardt is like a fridged girlfriend event that spurns this story forward.
Yeah. But so we get kind of a hint at, like Joe mentioned, the pit prison is going to become their home base. They're kind of restructuring the secret agent force towards finding the Transformers and dealing with this alien tech.
Killing
Optimus. And we get Optimus. It's actually a cool shot, but on Hawk's iPad, or Hawk's assistant's iPad, we see Optimus with Megatron's gun arm shooting. It's kind of a cool
You're like,
thing.
There's more of these robot things out there. Our intelligence found this one that turns into a giant truck, kind of thing. And he's like, let's fucking kill them all. I hate robots.
We destroy them all. We kill them all. We kill them all.
Which is interesting, because by G.I. Joe, it kind of becomes, and granted, G.I. Joe's only on issue 4, so it hasn't gotten very far in terms of like, let's start introducing the Transformers and we'll maybe cross over at some point or whatever, who the fuck knows. But right now, in the current G.I. Joe comic, it's kind of like an arms race to acquire pieces of Transformers to like make laser guns and shit. Like they haven't like addressed the threat that is the Transformers yet in the G.I. Joe comic. It's like Cobra versus G.I. Joe trying to acquire Energon to like power their bats,
but they haven't directly dealt with the giant robot.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm interested to see where they go with that, when they eventually do go with that.
Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting to see.
All right, but that's it. That's the end of the 5th issue. We're done with Duke.
Yeah, that's Duke 1 through 5.
I would say rock and roll. I would say rock and roll is probably like a 6 to a 7 on the Snyder Zoo scale.
He's pretty.
Yeah, what do you think? Snyder Zoo scale, likewise. Yeah, like
there's a lot of.
If anyone's on it, it's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll, though.
For sure.
The Vantage. Yeah.
I mean, they all kind of are, but like rock and roll is the peak.
He's the peak, but also Duke. When he meets Clutch and Clutch gives him the new shirt, it's like very tight fitting. You see, I mean, he's pretty ripped too, but definitely rock and roll is the closest to approaching.
I don't know. What do you think? What would you call rock and roll, Patty? He's got those penis arm veins when he's sitting down a boombox. He's just holding a boombox.
I don't know how big he is. He doesn't seem too much bigger than the other characters, so I don't really know. But he's proportionally huge. He's obviously bigger than them. I just don't know how much bigger.
But he does. I think the key, because we've talked about Snyder Zeus a lot, and again, if you're a new listener to this podcast, we are talking about the Zeus who was in the Snyder cut of the Justice League in the flashbacks of Darkseid attacking the Earth. And it's just this incredibly chiseled.
I just realized how insane that is if you have no idea what we're doing.
Some people don't know.
I hope no one knows.
But that's what we mean by
we're talking about Snyder Zeus. Have you seen Snyder Zeus? He's ripped.
You should just Google image search Zeus Snyder Justice League and you'll know what we mean.
I need to make like the thing that you hate, Al, like with the woo Super Friends sound. I need to make something that's just like Snyder Zeus and just have pictures of Snyder Zeus everywhere or something. Like we need something. So we need some visual reference.
But all of this is to say, Snyder Zeus is not just a bulky muscle builder, man. He has the definition of a marble rock face.
Yeah.
He's
a 10 on the human scale of human beings. He's the absolute peak 10.
It is 0%.
And everyone else we're just kind of seeing where they would lie. I would say rock and roll is like a solid 6 at least. Like he's huge.
I think 6 to 6.5 range sounds right for rock and roll. But I just wanted to make the point that Snyder Zeus, it's not just the bulk, it is that he is chiseled from marble. It is jagged edges.
Also, the proportions are just crazy.
I know, but it is the bulk because his proportions are insane. Like his arm is like the size of my entire body.
Right, but it's also 0% body fat. It's also just,
that's definitely
it is like hard edges. But anyway, but rock and roll, I'll give
I'm doing a whole new thing. We're gonna do a Snyder Zeus scale. I'm gonna
all right, but
put some imagery.
Having said that, as great as this physique is, does not pass the Bechdel test. J-Dub, Joshua Williamson, we've got to do better.
Yeah. I mean, even in the G.I. Joe comics so far, the team consists of basically these characters that you've seen.
Yeah.
You've been introduced to already. It's Rock and Roll,
I guess
Stalker,
maybe I guess
Clutch, Duke, and Baroness is on the team. So
to
like,
Williamson's credit,
and
maybe
Cover
he,
Girl.
yeah, but to Williamson's credit, maybe he knew Trump was going to win and DEI wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe he just knew ahead of time that he could just make a team of
G.I. Joe has
dudes.
always been a very inclusive organization. you know?
Okay, well, maybe he just thought he could just make a team of dudes and it'd be fine because he knew where things were going.
Well, I just said when G.I. Joe starts, it's 2 girls are on the team out of 6. That's a lot.
I don't know. Is that a lot? It's less than half.
I mean, it's more than 0.
It is more than 0. It is more than 0. All right, let's do recommend. I guess we're done. I mean, I honestly, do I recommend it or not? It's a tough question. I thought it was fun. I had fun with it. I don't think. All right, short answer, yes, I'd recommend it. Let me just do short version. I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Longer version. I don't. If somebody was like, "Hey, I want to get into comics," this wouldn't be the top 1 million that come up.
Fair.
But I just, if it's in the context of whatever, I'd say, sure, I had fun reading this. Give it a shot. The art was great. Again, Tom Reilly's art referenced kind of European art, that whole aesthetic, the 60s spy movie vibe going on, times 80s action movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. So if all of that is within the context of the conversation, I'd recommend it. But I wouldn't, I don't know. I wouldn't.
No, I get it. I get your
long
answer.
People, I wouldn't tell people like, you've got to read this comic. Like, stop everything, read this comic. It would just be, if it happened to be pertinent to the conversation, I'd say, sure, I enjoyed this. Go for it. Mm-hmm. But it's not like I wouldn't, like new X-Men or something like that. I would just tell anybody, like, read this fucking comic or Swamp Thing.
That's
like the Swamp Thing we
fair.
did is.
So
like,
you're saying recommend with a
incredible.
caveat of
Right.
like it needs context. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I think
yeah.
it needs I think it needs the context of like, has this person watched Reacher before? Do they enjoy Mission Impossible? Like that kind of thing. Like I will say this, in the broad scheme of like G.I. Joe as a series, as an entity, as an IP, like it is very conducive to introducing you to that those lines of characters. So like as a thing to read, as the first thing to read, yes, absolutely, I would recommend it. Like if you're interested in reading about G.I. Joe and you want to, like, this is a fantastic introduction to these characters. I loved all the little. Some of them are like flips on the head. Like for instance, I mean, we didn't talk about it, but Major Blood classically has an eye patch. Always has. So like getting to see him getting his eye blown out was pretty fun for me. So like there's like little things like that were cool, but reintroducing a new group of people to this story, I think this was a very good way to do it. I really enjoyed reading it. But that's being said by somebody that's like a huge fan of G.I. Joe. So like, and Transformers. But like, all that being said, I would recommend it. But yeah, there is the tiny caveat of like, it has to be under the context of like, I want something that's not superhero, or I want something that's like specifically different. Like I would be like, oh, well, this is fun. This is a fun book. Or are you like, we just watched Predator together from the 1980s with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm like, oh, you want a comic book that's basically that? Here you go, like kind of thing. Like, so I would introduce it to people with the context of like what it is, because it is what it is. But that being said, yeah, I would recommend it.
I would not recommend it just because, as I mentioned, I'm not really into this genre. I was not a big G.I. Joe person, so it doesn't really hit the nostalgia button for me at all. And I think the only context I would recommend it, if someone was like a G.I. Joe person and asked if I'd ever read this comic, I would say, yes, it was pretty good. My friend that's really into G.I. Joes really liked it. Like, that's my context for it. Like, if someone would be like,
sure.
Patrick, I want a good read, what do you recommend? There's a million comics, not a million, I guess, but several hundred.
Yeah, I think
it's
like the context is very important in this scenario. Yeah. Like something that's killing the children, I'd be like, this is crazy comic, you should read it.
Oh yeah,
I've recommended that to people that have no idea what they're talking about, like kind of thing. So like it's a hard thing to be like, absolutely yes, but at the same time, like I'm still landing on a yes. But yeah, I get it. I get Patty beating though.
Yeah, I get that. Again, I think it's just a soft yes of like it's a yes, but with all sorts of qualifications. Like, do you want to read
Mhm.
something that's like ironically kind of fun and harks back to 80s action movies, that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, I wouldn't say, if someone's like, hey, I want to read a comic, I wouldn't. There's way more.
The only caveat I would say to all of this conversation right now is that the art is spectacular.
The art is
And
great. I did
and
love
he
Riders
if he
Art.
drew
Yeah.
something else, I'd be like, I'm gonna follow this artist to whatever he does next. Like that's how good I loved how much I loved the art. He followed right into G.I. Joe, so I'm happy. But like if he went on to do something else, I'd probably be like, what is he doing next? Because that's how good it was. But yeah, I guess that's we won comics for the week, right?
We did it.
We did it.
Yeah.
We did it. Good journey, Couchers.
Goodbye.
Got it.